What's going on, everybody? Hi, welcome to the show. It's I gotta take this away here, and then boom, there we are. I'm gonna stop playing the music because I could not hear our guest. Dave Lang is here.
Hello, Jeff.
Hello. It's going good.
Also, Denzians of the Jeff Gerstmann show. Hello.
Yes, that's right. The production staff is all here. Everybody's pretty excited about today's show, broadcasting to different platforms and through different tools, and maybe everything will break and everything all at once.
What is it saying? Like, F it, we'll do it live. I believe
something like that.
Yeah, that's a meme or something.
Yeah, I think that's what they say. What the kids are saying online these days.
It's extremely topical reference.
Yeah. Everyone's picking up. They're like, yeah, man, awesome. That's very hip.
Yeah.
Dave Lang, the founder of Iron Galaxy Studios, if you're not familiar, makers of such games. I guess most recently Rumbleverse, Extinction, Dive Kick,
Killer
Instinct, yeah, Marvel versus Capcom Origins.
We have a game we helped out on coming out today. Actually,
really? Which is it?
We did a little bit helping Naughty Dog get Last of Us PC out today.
Oh, nice. Yeah,
that's
awesome.
Exciting.
So that's like a big part of what the studio does as well. I mean, probably like an even big, like probably the biggest part of what the studio does is come in and assist developers at either finishing games or bringing them other places or that sort of thing.
Yeah. So there's like a 10-minute explanation, a 5-minute, a 2-minute. I'll give you the 1 minute.
Okay.
So most of what we do is help other people make their games. Like code development, right? Whether you want, you got an Xbox, you want a PlayStation, you want to optimize, whatever it is, right? That's what we can do. And so it's a really good business because people always need help, and it's not but it's not the romantic vision people always imagine video game development is, right? And so that's a bit of I think we're pretty unique in terms of like the game landscape. We still do our own stuff too, like Rumbleverse, like you mentioned. But yeah, we do a lot of helping other people make their games.
Cool, awesome. I'm hearing from the chat. This is the first time we were like kicking the tires on this stuff. People are saying that you're echoing, and I don't know why, because I'm not hearing you echo.
That's just my natural speaking pattern.
Okay. All right.
I've double vocal cords, and one is delayed.
I just figured out why it's happening. Hang on, okay. I can fix this. Victor fix. Okay, I'm gonna disappear. So you run the show for a couple minutes.
Got it.
And everything will be fine.
All right, what's cracking, everyone? It's your boy Dave Lang here. Look at this exotic locale I'm in. Whoever saw this coming? No one. I wasn't ready to run a show right now, so I can't see what chat is saying. But hey, remember that time Vinyaki tweeted out my phone number? What a banger, huh? That's kind of all I got. It's Tuesday, by the way. Oh, Jeff's back, thank God.
Hello. Now this should be fixed.
Okay.
So before I
was hearing myself too, and I thought that was like normal. So
yeah, okay.
I'm not hearing myself anymore. So that's
what I was doing. I mean, if you want the I'll give you the 1 minute explanation. I was feeding all of my system audio back into this software, thinking like, well, if I want to play sound effects or something, I need that. I can't just have the microphone. Yeah. But then realizing that that's going to pull you through as well and feed you back out. So
classic boner, just a classic boner.
Exactly. A full on. And so here we are. Okay. All right. Starting again. 3, 2. We'll do it live. I think that's what everyone.
All the kids are saying.
Yeah. So gosh, I feel like I saw you at the Game Awards. I was like 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
We haven't had a proper hangout in a very long time.
Yeah.
It's been way too long.
The world's been like that, I guess.
There's some. I think one thing that doesn't help is me and you are both very. Like, it takes a lot to get us anywhere and commit to something. We're both very much like that.
Yeah.
And so unless the stars align, it's just not going to happen, period. But yeah. So
yeah, I've been hiding in the house. I don't wear shoes a lot of the time.
That was the weirdest thing when I started to like. This is not like a original thought by any stretch, but like when I started wearing socks again regularly, like my feet itched all the time.
Yeah.
And it was super weird. I'm like, can I not wear socks anymore? Is this a side effect of COVID? like why are my feet so? Oh yeah, I just haven't had socks on for like 3 years. So
yeah. I'm still kind of living. I'm still kind of living that life, but that's I don't know, like working on my own or whatever. But so I mean, prior to all that stuff, obviously, well, I mean, you still do offices in Chicago and Orlando. Like, what has that process been like? Are you like one of these guys that's like, you got to get back in the office 3 days a week, or like what's the?
Yeah. So we actually opened up a studio in Nashville last year as well.
Oh right, yeah.
And so we got that going. And yeah, it was an interesting process for us because at the beginning, when we were thinking about it, it was a lot of like we were making decisions kind of based out of fear, like if we make people go back, like we'll lose a lot of really good people. That sucks. Like da da da. But then after a while, it's just like kind of was just talking about like think about it as a design problem instead of like the thinking about the consequences first. And like the company basically turned into this, right? It turned into faces, boxes on a screen, right?
Yep.
And I'm generically of the opinion that there's no difference between one company and another if this is the company, right?
Yes.
Like if this is
some might say you don't even need to work for a company anymore if this is what it's going to be.
Yeah, like this is just this is what it is, and I didn't want to work at a company like that. I wanted to be at a place, and so we are doing hybrid. We're doing I think 2 days in the week required, and we just started putting people back in. I don't know, about 2 months ago, I think we started putting people back in, and it's been good. People have mostly been doing Tuesday, Thursday, and it's great. Tuesday, Thursday, the lunchroom's full. People are chilling and seemingly good, happy to see each other. And it's still early days for hybrid for us, and so who knows what it'll look like a year from now.
Right.
Maybe people will get sick of it and whatever. Maybe people will lean into it even more. Who knows? But yeah, we were definitely. I just didn't want to work in a place where I never saw anybody, man. It was super super lame to me, and here we are. So yeah, we're back.
Yeah. No. That makes sense for sure. Yeah. I think
one thing that's weird about it is it's like people online treat like going back to the studio like a human rights issue. It's very strange to me. like it's like listen, some people like if you don't want to go back to the office, that's cool, man. Like God bless you. God like there's a lot of jobs out there where you don't have to anymore. But like some of us want to be back in. And this is a place for them. It's just it's that simple. Like I'm not making anyone come in. Like you can just go find another job if you want one. It's just super weird to me. It's like how people treat it. I never quite wrap my head around that.
Yeah, I think it was weird, because like part of me moving down here, there were, at the time I was employed for a company, and there was a discussion about like, okay, opening a new office down around here, like, oh, let's do a thing in Burbank, do this. And so I kind of moved down here with the idea in the back of my head of like, oh, if this materializes and works out, then yeah, there's a return to an office, there's all this other stuff, and then the bottom dropped out of that, and so it was like, oh, okay, now it's truly this, and that's been, I think, where some of the other stuff came up of just like, I like kind of what you're saying is just like, but from a different angle of if it's the same no matter what, then at some point why do it for another company when you can just kind of do it for yourself? But
yeah, or just even like like I think there's some people that even if it's for yourself, they still like there's some people that can make a bond over like great distances and online, like and so I still think there's a virtue in like teaming up with people to do something like that if that's what you need. But again, for me, it was just like that's just not a place I want to work at, man. It's just not for me. And when I started talking to more people about it, they're like, a lot of people felt the same way, and so we just kind of like leaned into that a little bit. And but it's all like everything else during this time. It's like who knows, right? Check back in 3 months.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, it's like one thing changes, and you're like, okay, we're shutting back down again and doing this, and it's all like, fluid.
I feel like we've entered for the last 3 years, like nothing has been permanent, right?
Yeah.
And so we'll see, but yeah.
And not to just like, not just here, just like relitigate the last 3 years or whatever, but like, I remember, just because I haven't talked to you about this, but like one of the things I remember early on about everyone working from home was, and in terms of like developing games and like some of the roadblocks that people hit along
Yeah.
those lines, it was a lot of like proprietary, dev kits,
Yeah, yeah.
and Nintendo doesn't like you to take its dev kits outside of the office you told them that the dev kits would be in,
Yep.
and some of this other stuff like that. I just, like as that. I mean, if you could, I wonder if you could walk me through some of that, like in the early days. Like, was it crazy, or was everyone like, "Hey, this is everything is crazy, so of course you can take this dev kit and go here and do this or whatever"?
Um, yeah, I mean, most everyone understood the situation and was pretty like eventually everyone figured it out, right? And
Right.
some people got there faster than others, right? Like, um, I would say typically like the more like security infosec focused the company is, the more resistant they were to that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But eventually everyone's like, we got to ship these games, like whatever it takes, like, let's figure it out. And so like, but it was a huge relief, like for us, like we really depend on, like I said, we do most of our stuff is helping other people ship their games, right? That's most of
Yeah.
what we do. Like, and so we're more at the whims of our partners' policies than I think
Mhm.
most companies are, right?
Right.
And
Right.
making sure that, like, oh yeah, we're working with 6 different people right now, and I hope all 6 allow us to keep working with them. That was a little stressful.
Yeah.
But eventually everyone kind of got aligned on the same page. There was one project where we had to leave the stuff in the studio, but then we'd remote into that PC and
Oh,
do the
right.
work. And so that wasn't optimal, but the partner realized it wasn't optimal, and they were like, "Oh, we're okay with it being slower, but this is what we need to do," you know. And
Right.
so, um, that's not the most fun environment for everyone to make a game in, but it allowed us to keep working, and it is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Um, I saw you talking about AI on Twitter a little bit. This has obviously been making the
Yeah,
rounds, and just
yeah, yeah,
like,
yeah,
some of the stuff came out of GDC, where we'll in the news, like Ubisoft is like, we're gonna use an AI tool to write barks and
yeah, yeah.
stuff like that. I just it's not to just like keep throwing controversial topic after
I,
topic at you, but like this one's been weirdly hot. I just, you've been doing this since the 90s. You did not use any
yeah,
AI tools to code Space Jam for the Saturn.
did not, yeah.
Um, but like, what do you think about the stuff that's out there? Is it something you're even looking at as like, hey, this might help us, or is it also weird
Yeah.
now that?
I no, I think I'm excited about AI. Like, let's just set some framework for this
Sure.
discussion. Like, I'm assuming we can solve, and we will have to solve because of legal reasons, like the ethics of training an AI, right?
Right.
Like, that's not going to get solved this summer, right? It's
Yeah.
not going to get solved next summer, but eventually that shit's going to get solved. It just has to, right?
Mhm.
Um, and let's assume for a moment that like that that's the backdrop by which I'm speaking. So like obviously I don't want people like rummaging through your online portfolio and copying your whatever. That's obviously garbo. It doesn't make
Right.
any sense, right?
Yeah.
Um, but what I am excited about is like I think most people working on AI for game stuff right now, it's kind of like the Web3 stuff where they weren't game developers and they're
Right.
not game developers and they're making a bunch of stuff game developers don't, in my view anyway, want or need. You know,
Hmm.
like I don't think most game developers want like, hey, push a button and you'll get like a dog with a crown model.
Right.
I just don't. But what we do want, and what I want as a game developer, I don't want to speak for all game developers, but what I want, there's so much boring shit that we have to do all the time,
Yeah.
like absolute mind-numbingly boring things that you do on every single game, and it's always boring, and it's not anything that makes the game special or unique. If we could automate some of that stuff, I would be over the moon, right? Like, give us tools to speed up some really like skinning a model, doing a first pass skinning
Sure.
of the model or whatever, right? And boy, we could work on what makes our game unique and fun and special.
Hmm.
Like, it would really speed up our jobs, make the games better. And so like, I'm not looking at this as like a threat to my job or a threat to our job because like it's just not. that's I
Yeah.
just don't. Yeah, that's not.
It doesn't seem like that stuff's necessarily even going to be good enough anytime soon to just like, oh, you're going to push this button, drop it right in the game. No one's going to look at it. No one's going to be like, yep, we generated all this. Boom, push it in. Like that seems crazy.
Yeah, I mean, at the end, like, will people try to do that? Absolutely. Like, will Steam get flooded with that stuff? Absolutely. But like, am I worried about that? No, I'm not worried about that. Like,
well, like Steam is flooded with.
It's all bullshit. Pachinko, Match 3.
Well, I downloaded a game the other day. Like, so there are some cases where people are putting games on Steam and charging like $200 for them. And as a member of the press, I don't have to pay that price, which is nice. But there's just situations where like, we took this Unity tutorial and we published it to Steam. Ha ha ha.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I don't know. All the storefronts are so crazy right now.
Discovery has been broken for 5 years on all these storefronts. Like it's been broken and is completely broken. Because the stores aren't necessarily incentivized to fix it, right?
Right.
And so, well, that's not fair. Actually, it's a hard problem. So.
Yeah, like the store. It feels like the storefronts were built with like 2 generations ago, like pacing of game releases in mind, and now they're getting way more. Yeah,
it's a hard problem. I was being overly reductive there, so apologies to everyone that runs a store. But like, it's just like that's the status quo. If you want to have a game be successful, like. You need to figure that shit out on your own because like it's not going to get solved.
I'm motioning to a man outside my window here who's you can go ahead and head on in. Okay.
Let everybody in, Jeff.
Yeah, everybody we're coming in here.
Is that Dirty Mike and the boys or who is that?
Yeah, Dirty Mike and the boys are showing up to work on the furnace and then actually no, Dirty Mike is showing up in a couple hours to work on the roof.
Okay, perfect. Good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a good day for getting things done on the house before it rains, and all these broken tiles on my roof lead to a much larger problem. Turns out, Ventura County, it's windy out here. No one.
Did you guys get hammered like NorCal did last week, or was it?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, but not that bad, and not that long. But there's like we got flood watch type stuff, but it's mostly for like things that are 30 or 40 miles away from us, where the actual problems were kind of closer to the snow a little bit. And so here it was just like, the sides of my house became like a moat kind of, and, then that all dried up and went away, but it dried up right against the side of the house, which is probably not great, but, I don't know. It's a slab foundation. It's not wood like it was up in NorCal. So I'm a little less worried about it, but I don't know.
Slab's a good word.
Yeah, it is. It's nice.
It just feels good to hear. I like it. I like hearing it, and I like saying it. I just realized that slab.
When it came time to when the Xbox Series X came out, when they sent one to me, like part of that process is like, what do you want to name it? And I just instinctively wrote in the word slab.
Really?
Yeah.
So I'm not alone here. Excellent.
No, you're not alone. Slab is a hell of a word. I looked at that thing and I said, what is this thing? It was like, I wouldn't be like obelisk. No, it's just a big hulking slab of a console, just a big meat box.
It's almost like there's a reason we're friends.
Yeah,
like that.
Almost like we get along in a few different ways. Our refusal to listen to Post Malone
killed a good podcast too. Killed a good concept for a podcast.
Killed a good concept for a podcast.
Yeah.
Where I think I realized that many as 5-ish episodes in, where I was like, I don't know that I have the lingo. There's something about describing music. It's like I can describe games all day long. Some might say I've been, doing it for decades, but there's something about like actually describing music to another person that I feel like totally inadequate. I'm just like, the beat knocks.
Yeah. Yeah.
This one goes hard, son.
Yeah. It's I think there's a lot of reasons for me. Like the biggest one for me was I think we eventually would have figured that stuff eventually. But like for me, it's just the time, man. It's like my life's getting more complicated, not less complicated. And like throwing in another like 4 hours a week for something I'm doing for free is like no me gusta.
Yeah. But I think there's probably a middle ground there where we maybe get together and talk occasionally. Like the text I got from you out of nowhere that was just like, Hey, this Macklemore single.
It sucks, but it's so good.
It's so good.
Mad. I'm so mad. It's so good.
It's so good.
I made my whole life without liking any Macklemore, and then he drops that, and I'm like, oh my god, I like Macklemore now.
Do you feel angry at Premiere for
I
contributing
was, but then who did I talk? I was talking to someone about it, and I got over it. I forgave Primo at the end of the day.
Nice.
So Primo, if you're watching,
yeah,
the
he's on the Discord. Yeah, and
Primo's just getting his check. He's getting, that's all. Like you can't blame Primo for getting paid, right?
And I think the thing, the problem that I got hung up with on that track, which is it's its most recent single. I can't even remember the name of it for people out there who don't know what we're talking about. Heroes.
Yeah.
Is I was just like, I kind of like what he has to say. Also, there's a certain aspect of it lyrically that I'm like, man, this dude's capable.
Yeah,
this guy listened to a lot of hip hop. As someone who rapped and maybe should not have been myself, I'll say that guy listened to quite a lot of hip hop.
Yeah, I mean it's well constructed. The rhymes are clever. It seems like I'm not aware of anyone that has expressed some of those thoughts before, right? That I listened to anyway. And so like it was just all like fresh and original, but he's old, and I'm like, how did he do this?
Yeah,
like maybe it's because I'm old. That's probably the answer. I'm guessing like maybe a lot of 17-year-old kids out there nodding their head to that jam, but like.
I wonder. I just feel like that nothing about that is going to be appealing to a 17-year-old. I feel like I listen to that like I feel like that track is written at us in a way.
If you're not familiar with DJ Quick's album cover, then yes, you probably don't like that song. That's probably there's probably a strong Venn diagram there.
Right. No, I don't know. People seem way more excited about the Danny Brown JPEG Mafia collaboration album. Have you listened to that yet?
I have not. I was for a long time during the start of COVID. I realized like some of the changes in my life where I'm not listening to music anymore because I'm not in the car ever, and that's mostly when I listen to music. And so I really made a concerted effort to listen to music at home, and I just gave up. There's a lot of artists I love, like A$AP Rock, one of my favorites. Right?
Yeah.
He's just a weird guy who raps a bunch of weird shit, and I love it. He's dropped 2 things I haven't listened to during like the last 3 years. I just haven't listened. I'm like, I don't care. Maybe
I'll get around to it, or
it's just like, and that if you would have told me like 5 years ago that would be the case, I'd be like, there's no effing way. Like that, you are describing someone that does not exist. It is not me, and here we are. But I love Danny Brown. That sounds great. Like I didn't listen to the new Vince Staples. I love Vince Staples.
Right. I think I listened to it like once and went like, huh, and then kind of moved on. Like I think that's sort of Like, I'm
honor bound to listen to the Nas. I haven't listened to Nas's latest one. There's so much stuff. It's just like if you say you like hip hop and you haven't listened to Nas, what are you doing? But here I am. So I don't know, man. It's been weird. Stop me if you've heard this before, but it's been weird.
It has been weird. I got into a lot of like old acid house from the 90s and like just like old dance music that I just never listened to then because it was the same year that like Snoop got big. And so I'm not going to go out here and listen to a bunch of weird computer music, god damn it. But now, I like a lot of computer music. So what am I doing?
The most recent thing I've gotten into is there's a never-ending feed on YouTube of rain and storm sounds.
Okay.
Never ending. And the newest ones have gone from like, this is 8 hours, you're gonna sleep like a baby, to like 24/7 live stream is the new shit.
Yeah.
I've been like slowly trying to find the best one. And there's like there's literally a billion of them.
Stack ranking the rain and wind sound.
I have a short list of some absolute bangers.
Nice.
And that's what I've been listening to lately, Jeff. So yeah, my mental health's great.
Great, awesome. Everyone's super fucking healthy. Everything's going fine. I have listened to this the Danny Brown Scaring the Hose. It is called. Of course. Yeah. And it's fucking crazy. It's parts of it are like almost like they produced it poorly on purpose. It sounds like they were being chased while they recorded it. Like it's this very dense, thickly produced thing, but then also it's muffled. Danny is mixed too low, and this is like, there's just shit about it that I'm like, this is like broken, but I love the way it's broken.
There's a like that is one thing that's cool about it. Like I do think like insofar as I've been paying attention, which is very lightly at that,
sure.
But like it seems to me like in hip hop, like there are a lot of really, I don't want to say mainstream, but like headliner type artists. Like I would consider like Danny Brown like a headliner, Vince Staples like a headliner, like that have been trying just some weird stuff in a way that people that kind of established usually don't. And like that West Side Gun, right?
Yeah.
There's like anything Grizel, like it's all just fucking weird and strange, and they don't need to do that to get ears anymore. It just they want to do it, and I will always listen to that stuff and give it a spin, and maybe I never listen to it again. But I'm just so glad it exists because it kind of reminds me of like, not to get too like whimsical here, but like, it's like hip hop was always supposed to be like an experiment. Right, it's a thing where it's like, hey, it's a brand new thing, we're making it, and then it turned into this hyper commercial thing, and then to see some of the most commercially successful people kind of starting to experiment so much more just gets me pumped up about the form. And so, not pumped up enough to listen to their music, mind you.
Sure.
But conceptually, it gets me pumped up. So I'm excited. Like when I do start, like, I'm assuming this is a phase, and when I get out of this phase, I literally have probably 30 records I just need to dig into, and that's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, but at some point you're just gonna be like, well, I'm okay, that's all fine and good, I'll get to those, but put this Gangstar in here and just listen to this instead.
Yeah. The classic playlist. The one thing I did, oh god, fudge, what was the name of the producer? Good storyline. It'll pop in my head when we're talking about another topic, and I'll just shout it out.
Okay,
but
good.
I was listening to something, and I'm like, Jeff has to listen to this, and then I forgot to text you about it.
Okay.
So I will. You talk for a minute. I'll find it on my phone.
Okay. All right. Let's see. We've got a handful of news stories here. I've got some questions from the Gerstmann advisory panel over at patreon.com/Jeff Gerstmann.
They're just good eggs. They're just good eggs. Any way you slice it.
Just solid folks. You can sign up. In fact, annual memberships are now available to the Patreon at a slight discount. So if you've been looking for a slight discount, you can get that slight discount.
Tobacco. Are you familiar with tobacco?
Yes, I am.
Okay. You love tobacco, right? Right there. Like, I listened to that. I heard some of that stuff. I'm like, oh, Jeff's got to listen to this. And
it's fucking wild. Yeah. Absolutely.
It all kind of sounds the same, but I'm okay with it for now.
It's like definitely like there's a like I'm gonna put this on and have it on because of that it's okay that it all sounds the same. That it ends up kind of being this droney thing almost. Let's see. We are 22 years removed and a couple of days here from the final airing of WCW Nitro. When
years, huh?
when WWE purchased WCW and subsumed them, and then the EA's games went away. So I figure it's perfect time to reflect on the majesty and the pageantry of WCW Backstage Assault.
Oh, you're just gonna breeze right past Mayhem, huh?
Yeah, because Backstage Assault was the one that they're like, okay, you guys cut your teeth on Mayhem, and Backstage Assault is where it meant something. No, but they're similar games. Obviously, but wrestling games these days are such gigantic, crazy productions, and they seemed large then at the time, or at least in terms of the user interest in them and all of that. When you were working on both Mayhem and Backstage Assault, right? You touched both.
Yeah, I was the N64 lead on both of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like, did it feel like a big deal that you were like, this is this awesome licensed thing? And
yeah, like Mayhem more than Backstage Assault, like because the backdrop is this, like a lot of us either left or were expelled from Acclaim Salt Lake, and that's where they were working on the then WWF games,
right? Attitude and Warzone and
those games were super awesome. They did a great job with those.
I agree. Everyone fucking hates those games now, but I agree with you. They were good.
they looked amazing. They played well. Like
Yeah.
they set a high bar. But when the founder of Kodiak was the place where we went to go work at, and
Yeah.
when you made the deal with EA did the deal with WCW. That was still when WCW was kind of going up the
Right.
hill, and then like some point in development, it started to fall off a cliff, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so we made Mayhem, and we made it a brand new wrestling game from scratch in like 18 months that was supposed to compete with all these, all the Japanese stuff and everything else that was being made, and it's just like
Yeah.
it did okay. Like I still remember one of my best memories from there is that E3 where EA had the big wrestling ring with the demo stations in the ring,
Yeah.
and Sting was there, and like that was the first time I felt like holy shit, what I'm doing is kind of actually important, you know.
Yeah.
Um, in my brief time in the industry at that point. And then Mayhem came out, and it did fine, but it didn't do what EA needed it to do to pay for the license
Right.
and the production and the marketing um and so we get into Backstage Assault, and it's like, I think we all like us and EA. I'm going to talk about us as one big group here. So like, I
Yeah.
don't think I'm collectively slinging mud at either people I worked with or EA or whatever. It's just we were all one big group, and all of us kind of like we're just not going to catch these other developers. Like we're always going to be X years behind them. Like, so what
Yeah.
can we do to make a competitive game with maybe like a not competitive license, right?
Right.
And so that's how the
Like
idea
by
for
the day, by the week, WCW seemed
just
like
fell
it
off
was
a
just
cliff.
like,
Just fell
yeah.
off a cliff, yeah. And
Yeah.
um, so then we had, I forgot who it was exactly, but we had this throwaway thing in Mayhem where, one of the decisions we made in Mayhem where we thought we could compete was the ring entrances,
Mhm.
and so we built, because remember how WCW had like all those, I say it like it's not a thing now, but they had like, the thing at Sturgis, I forget what it was called, but they had these
Yeah.
almost monthly events, right?
Right.
And they all had their own set pieces and all this.
Hmm.
We wanted to kind of like lovingly recreate those. And then one day we like, oh, good gimmick because we can throw people back through the
Right.
entrance.
You Irish
then,
whip them through the entrance, and it ends up, yeah.
there's like just a box with like a black and white security camera watching you while you get back in. And it was just this throwaway gimmick we cooked up over a couple days. And someone's like, you know what? If we can't compete with the wrestling stuff, like maybe that's the game. Like this is
Right.
all the stuff the wrestlers get into that you don't see. It's kind of like Deep Space Nine, right? Where it's like, it's like
Yeah.
it already sounds horrible, but it made sense at the time. So
Totally. Like, no, I mean, yes, it all makes sense in a really scary way. I'm like, yeah, no, like Deep Space Nine, of course.
it's like we did this thing where it's like we were talking about. It's one of the classic examples of like strategically this makes sense, but I'm not sure. Again, the royal we,
Mhm.
thought hard enough about, is this something gamers actually want?
Right.
It's like,
Yeah.
and then we had a compressed timeline, a compressed budget for it as well, because it was experimental, and it just ended up not being, one, that great, and two, competitive with what was already out there. And so that was kind of there's supposed to be one more game after that. It was a 3-game deal, and then that kind of heralded the end of Kodiak Interactive.
Yeah, I remember, because I mean that's when WCW went away, so I imagine that like all those licensing deals or whatever kind of like EA was
Although,
probably
fun fact for you,
yeah.
before so man, do we actually? I think the founder of Kodiak. So we were working on an ECW game
Really.
before WCW, and God, let me think of so we had because I remember because we would have, I think Rich went to shows and stuff, so I think we must have actually had the license.
Yeah.
But I think the plan all along was just, okay, do this, and then we'll get EA. We'll show them we can do wrestling too, and we'll get EA to publish it. And then EA didn't want to publish ECW or something, and so they went with WCW and like the rest of this. But like for the first, I don't know, before we even got into the WCW stuff, I was there a year working on ECW stuff. That's where we built the technology and the rendering and all of
Wow.
that stuff. And so, yeah, like we had ECW stuff. Maybe we never actually had the license. It was aspirational, but yeah, like the first months of that game being played were all ECW stuff. So
It's crazy because there was just another like Kevin Gill who does wrestling announcing now, but was at IDOS and stuff before, and he told a story recently because I guess he was at Rockstar for a while, and that Rockstar almost signed a deal with ECW at one point back then too, like kind of before Acclaim came in and took it. Because once Acclaim lost WWE to THQ, they were like, we can just slap ECW guys into this game and that'll be hardcore, right? We'll put a blood texture here, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
And they ended up getting it. But yeah, that's funny. It's I mean, it makes sense. Like wrestling games were hot and ECW was the third brand. It was the only one that kind of didn't have a license. It makes sense that it would kind of a few different studios would be trying to make it happen.
Yeah, because we didn't even have dev kits back then, and so we were doing it all on 3DFX hardware. And I wrote straight to the Glide API, if you're familiar with that, if you remember that, like the glory days of 3DFX. Man, I've been turned on a new podcast. It's kind of like I really generically dislike stuff like this, but it's like a Silicon Valley founders podcast.
Oh, sure.
And
yeah.
They did a I don't want to give them a free plug on this. They can
of course
sponsor
not.
the show if they want to.
Yeah.
But they did this 2-part 5-hour podcast a few months ago on the history of NVIDIA.
Oh, huh.
Wow. Like anyone remotely interested in PC games should dig that up and go listen to it. It was really interesting and really just fun to kind of go back to those, like the Riva 128 and just like talk about all that old shit. And it was really well produced podcast. So yeah, I dig that up and give it a go because it's 5 hours. Quite a commitment, but
that's a lot.
I was enthralled. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that's I'll check. I'll probably check that out. I probably actually will check that out. Yeah, I'm trying to because like I went out to Salt Lake once. I want to say it was like for South Park, and like Jay Moon brought me out there. I don't know if you know Jay.
I don't.
Just the letter J. He's passed away not that long ago, but he was Acclaim. He was at Iguana for a while.
Oh, Jay. Yeah. I didn't know him. Like we had kind of a contentious relationship with both Iguana and Acclaim.
Okay.
It was let's leave it at that. It was not we didn't like them and they didn't like us and they bought the company and so it was very awkward. Yeah.
Yeah. No, the only thing that made me think of it was when you said you didn't have dev kits, because at one point we didn't have dev kits. Like we needed we needed to be able to review a lot of PlayStation 2 games. Yeah. And Sony was like, here's one. And this is before mod chips existed and everything else. So we at one point went to Jay and said like, hey, what's up? And I think we ended up buying like 3 dev kits off of him or something. In a very above board deal, totally legal, absolutely appropriate, and everything else. But I'm
sure it didn't violate any of the license agreements with the manufacturers.
Of course not. No.
You certainly didn't take the do not tamper sticker off. That would be a violation, obviously.
Of course. Why would I do that? That's just, I mean,
because you're a filthy vandal. That's why you would do that.
Well, yeah. I'm straight from the streets. Hey, speaking of the streets, you put out a game about fighting in the streets.
We did.
Rumbleverse.
Yeah, August.
Yeah. And it got shut down. Is that about a month ago now?
February 28th.
Yeah. I guess, obviously I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that you're, just business dealings or whatever. I'm not saying like spill all of it.
Sure.
Hey, what happened?
Yeah, it's like, there's a lot of things I'm willing to talk about right now. I think the thing that, or not willing to talk about, I should say, before people get too excited, like, we're focused on a couple different things. Like, one, just trying to find a new home for it, right? Like, and figuring it out and doing all that. Because, like, we launched in August, and generally pretty well received. Nominated for some DICE awards, et cetera, et cetera. I think people that got it really, really got it. And then it's just a fiercely competitive landscape,
Right.
And there's a handful of winners and then a whole lot of everyone else, right? And
Yeah.
I think the thing that sucked the most for me, this might sound weird, but just it sucked for the team
Right.
so much. Like the team really, we spent we worked on that game for over 4 years.
Yeah, I remember. I feel like I first heard about it or saw, like, I think Adam might have been like, check out this PowerPoint thing.
Yeah.
And that was a zillion years ago. And I'm like, man, yeah.
Yeah, and so when it was clear that the game was getting shut down, it's like, okay, well, how do we make this as right as possible for the people that love it, right?
Yeah.
And how do we take care of the team? Like, actually
Mm-hmm.
flip that order, if I'm being completely honest. Like, most concerned about the team and all that. And, um, I think we did right by both of those counts. And so right now, it's like, it's tough, right? Because, like, it's I think one thing people don't understand about why a game like that would get shut down. I saw a lot of stuff on Twitter, and it's just like if you put a game on the shelf and you
Mm-hmm.
charge $60 for it or whatever, it's if it's not like if it doesn't need matchmaking and it doesn't need this free to play back end, you're kind of done with your spend on the game. But
Right.
like we were spending money every day. Again, the royal we there. Let's use the royal we.
Sure. Yeah.
We're spending money on the game every day, just keeping it running.
And like, and
Right.
that's not just you, that's your publisher as
Epic,
well.
yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's why when I say the royal we, I'm trying not to get
Yeah.
into specific details about who did what or
Sure.
whatever, right?
Yeah.
But like, and it just at some point it's like if once the decision gets made, it's not as simple as just leave it up because the money has to come from somewhere, right?
Right.
And so the thing that was unfortunate about it was the timeline was so abrupt. We didn't really have a lot of great options to find a new home for it in a graceful manner, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so right now it's like the first priority for us was like get everyone on a different game right away. We're not
Mm-hmm.
going to lay anybody off. Because of that, and I'm pretty
Yeah.
proud we pulled that off. That's something I'm pretty happy about. And then it's like, okay, once we do that, then okay, let's find a new home for Rumbleverse in whatever form it ultimately takes, right?
Right.
Because there's still a great game there. I love that game,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not alone. Like we did build a pretty good community of people out there that wanted to see it thrive and wanted to see it prosper. And I want to bring something back for them to enjoy as well. So, kind of like a very vague, rambling non-answer for you there,
Sure.
but like that's the best I can do right now.
Yeah.
So.
But I guess, like, I mean, that kind of like, because the announcements about the game coming offline were also very vague, but there was a little bit of like, we hope this won't be the last time.
Yeah.
So I mean, I guess that's like you guys control the IP. Is it kind of back in your hands and you can kind of shop it around and like that?
Yeah. Like Epic was really cool with all that stuff, and they the game is ours. We own it 100%. We own the
Yeah.
IP 100%, and so for us, it's more like it just this is like how to describe this like it's not as simple as just rolling up with Rumbleverse and saying like to have someone else relaunch it would actually be a nice chunk of work. Like you need
Mm-hmm.
to get because we did rely on Epic Game Store services for a lot of functions, right? So we would need to
Yeah.
swap all that stuff out for something else, right? We need to get a new free to play backend. We need to do all this other stuff. So it's not as simple as just like handing the game over to publisher X and saying, okay,
Right.
now put it in your store the next day and we're good to go.
Yeah.
It's just not that simple. And that's why like I wish we had a little more time to make it a more graceful exit than we had. But it is what it is at this point. So
Yeah. I mean, I thought that, like, I don't know, again, for how abrupt all that stuff seemed, I guess like I came at it from the approach of like, well, at least everyone got a refund. It feels like there's a lot of
that's the minimum you should do. And
yeah.
Epic was great about that. Like Epic, they handled it. Once that decision got made, they handled it about as good as you possibly could. They took care of us. They took care of the people who invested money and time in the game, right?
Yeah.
And so nothing but good things to say about that part of it.
Nice.
Yeah.
that kind of, it brings us into some of the questions that we got from the folks on Patreon, the folks on the advisory panel, patreon.com/Jeff Gerstmann. Advisory panel. You don't want this smoke. We got a handful of questions, but Nanopus actually asks, what is it like trying to maintain morale at a company where you have a situation like Rumbleverse? I mean, it sounds like you just kind of tried to get everybody focused on another game, but man, after 4 years of work, that's
it sucks. It super sucks, right? Like, because like, I think the way we went about it, like the reason the company exists, like rewind the clock back 14 years, right?
Yeah.
The reason the company exists is I got sick of being at places that closed on me overnight, right? Like,
right.
I was at 3 places that essentially either closed without severance or told me I have to beat cheeks before I get fired because they're reducing the staff or whatever, and and it just sucked. And so when we started this company, it's like, this is not what we're doing. We're going to build something that is a business first and a game developer second, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it has to be able to sustain all the weird shit that we've ever seen in this industry. And, by and large, well, not by and large, we've absolutely done that, right? Like this is about as dramatic as it gets. Like having a large AAA, if you want to use that term, production closed on very short notice and not letting anyone go. It's just not something that happens in independent studios that often.
Right.
Yeah. Like most independent studios can't survive something like that. And so by doing all the other services type stuff and helping people understand that like when you come on Iron Galaxy, like we do this shit for a reason.
Right.
It's so if something really bad happens, everyone's going to be okay.
Yeah, like you can kind of absorb that and keep moving.
And we talk about that shit all the time, right?
It's almost like a lot of bad shit happens in the game industry all the time, and you have to talk about it, right?
But even when it's not, we still talk about it, and it's like, hey, listen, but then it's finally like, okay, it happened, and good news, it worked. None of you need to go look for a job,
right?
Like we're going to find something interesting for everyone here to do. We're going to figure it out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the first thing, is like, hey, don't worry. And the second thing is like, there's 2 categories of people. There's people that worked on that game, and then there's everyone else in the company, right?
Right.
And for the people that worked on that game, it's just confusion. It's just, I don't understand what's happening. It's just a lot of lamentation about like, because it's also one of those things where if you talk to, there's probably 100 people in the company that touched that game at some point, right?
Yeah.
Not counting all the people that did play tests or whatever, but people actually did work on it, and like 100 different opinions on what we should have done differently, right?
Right.
Like it's not like this. So it's a lot of kind of just like, people just need to express that in some way, and so they can feel heard. And they under, like, okay, so just giving a forum for people to kind of like vent and talk about it too, right?
Yeah.
And then for everyone else, it's just like, hey, we're gonna be fine. Don't worry about it. Just keep doing your thing,
right.
And then it's that first phase goes away, and then the second phase of like, okay, now seriously, are we gonna be able to bring it back? If not exactly the way it was today, in what form? And you just start thinking about that and doing some work on that. And we're just kind of, if I'm being honest, we're just finally getting to that kind of phase now, where we're just like, we're out of the, okay, the business is fine, right?
Yeah.
And onto the, okay, now what do we want to do?
Right.
We're just kind of onto that phase now. So it's challenging, but because we talk about just how crappy this industry can be so often, except for the new people haven't heard that speech enough. But like the people that have been around a couple of years have heard it a billion times, and they're like, okay, we get it, So that's my view on it. I also probably have a very narrow perspective on how most people felt, given where I'm at in the company. But like,
cool. Was it difficult to get, this is a question from Frederick, was it difficult to start the studio in the first place? Like, what were the big hurdles when it came to like starting the studio up, obviously 14 years ago, things have changed quite a lot. But like, what did it take to get established and have a good name and get on to working with? I mean, you've gone on to kind of work on some of the biggest franchises on the planet. Like, kind of what did it take to make that happen? Or to earn the trust of the business? I don't even.
So it was. I get to ask that question a lot by people like, "Hey, I want to do what you did. How do you do it?" And like, I worked in the industry as a professional. Because I started making games when I was a kid, and they were all horrible or whatever. And then like I realized you could do it for a living, and I worked as a professional from '96 to I started in '96 at Sculptured, then in '98 went to Kodiak, then in 2001 went to Microsoft, and then Microsoft 2003 went to Midway, and I was at Midway till 2008. So I was in the industry for 12 years before I decided to do this, right? And so I already had tons of connections. I already had a billion people I worked with. Because one of the things that, it's a pretty small industry still. It was even smaller back then. And when you're at a studio like Kodiak or a studio like Sculptured or whatever, that Microsoft Salt Lake, that just gets scattered to the wind, people go everywhere. And as long as, if they think highly of you or they think you're good, that's an asset for you, right? Like you've got this network of people out there. And so really leverage that experience to kind of just start getting work for myself on a contract basis, like doing like tech direction for hire kind of sort of thing. And then as that was going well, people were like, "Oh, we could use more people like you. Do you know any?" And I started hiring people I worked with that I know and like. And we did that for a year. And then after about a year is when I'm like, okay, like this, we could actually turn this into like, that's when I had full confidence it would work. Like a year in where it's like, okay, this is
a company, this is a real thing.
Yeah, there's an insatiable appetite for this sort of help, right, in the industry. And we just have to, if we can fill that, we'll be okay. And it's a very different way to start a game studio. Like, I think most people start studios because they have the game in their head that needs to get out or whatever. And that is just not anything about how it started, right? For us, it was like, hey, I don't want to fire my best friends, right?
Right.
And so I'm better make something that can stand the test of time. And also, I have an engineering background. I'm not a business person. And so figuring all that out on the fly was very like imposter syndrome-y inducing and like,
Sure. Yeah.
So, but yeah, like, so for me, like, but to answer Frederick's question, from the advisory board.
From the advisory panel.
Panel, excuse me. You should call it board, by the way. Panel. Come on. They're bored.
Okay.
Yeah, fix it. Fix it.
All
anyway,
right.
but for me it wasn't that hard actually. That's the pisser. Like it was really kind of before a lot of people did what we're doing now. Like everyone outsourced art back then, but no one outsourced engineering. It just didn't happen.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like I was this visionary person. It just happened to get lucky, good timing, right idea, right time.
Like you kind of had had a good name from.
It's just it's the only thing I could do. It's all I could do.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's like I'm gonna go sell this one thing I can do, and luckily people are buying it now. And so, I remember when I was talking to my wife about it, I was like, hey, give me 3 months, and if I can't get something together in 3 months, or it's not looking good, I'll go get a job doing whatever. And she was like, okay, cool. And then 3 months turned into a year, and then a year turned into 2 years. I'm like, okay, we're all in on this. And that's when we kind of like fully committed. So, well, I don't want to say fully committed, but that's when I just burned the boats and started hiring a bunch of people.
Right. And started like filing real paperwork and listening to Cannibal Ox and,
exactly.
making it all happen.
Yeah. Okay. And that's when it's like, because when you're working with your friends, it's like, hey, listen, we don't really have like a per diem policy. Just don't be a jerk.
Yep. Right.
And then when you start hiring other people that maybe you don't have those relationships with, you need to start becoming more formalized in a lot of ways. And so, that's more what I mean. But it was not that hard. But it's mostly just a function of like the timing and my career previously to starting the company than anything else, you know?
Yeah, because I mean, well, is part of it. The impression I always had is that, you know, because Midway had something of a name for being incredibly good at Unreal Engine, especially on PS3.
Yeah.
And that seems like something that a lot of other studios maybe needed help with. Is that part of, like, in the early days, they were like, yo, you guys are Unreal wizards and we have a PS3 port that is broken. Can you come make it not broken?
Yeah, so Midway, I was part of the advanced technology group at Midway, and that was a group in Chicago, a room full of like 20 or so engineers, and like kind of all we did was like help ship the next game out the door for Midway, and they were all Unreal 3 games, right?
Yeah.
Like Midway fully committed to Unreal 3, gave up on renderware, and they moved on. And we had helped ship in the ATG group Stranglehold, which,
Right.
or was it Area 52? Or
I think it.
which one was first? I think it was Stranglehold was first, right?
I think I can
Stranglehold.
look, but I think I want. I think Stranglehold feels like a very late in the game thing to me. Stranglehold is late 2007, and was it actually called Area 52?
I think it was Area called 51.
Yeah, it was just Area 51 because I know. Was there talk about doing a sequel to? Because there's Black Site Area 51 in 07, and there was just regular ass Area 51 in 05. Like 2 attempts to reboot the Area 51 franchise.
Oh, so I guess the game ultimately doesn't matter, but we helped ship the first PS3 UE3 game. Like we beat Turok out by like a week.
Okay.
Right? Yeah. And Unreal 3, you know, in the early stages of the PS3, did not take advantage of the PS3. It didn't really use the SPUs for a lot of stuff, and like, you know, it was still, you could make a game on it, but it wasn't fully optimized yet. And you know, having just come off the clutches of that, like the first like 3 years was us just like, hey, we can help you ship your PS3 UE3 game. You know, that was the pitch for the first 3 years.
Yeah.
And then we started getting into some more and more stuff as that became solved for everybody. But yeah, that's what we did at first. So yeah.
Right. Yeah. Nice. A1 Steaksa says Iron Galaxy has had their hands on a couple of the biggest VR titles with Skyrim VR and Fallout 4 VR. What was the experience like trying to make that notoriously difficult conversion? And if you had the opportunity to do it again, what would you do differently? I guess, like, what I want to know, I mean, you've done some VR stuff.
So just be very clear, we did very little on those games.
Okay.
So like part of what we do, there's some games we did, you know, soup to nuts on, right? And there's some games we just help out with a tiny bit. Okay. And for
let me hold you up a real sec. I need to check on this. I gotta
go get Dirty Mike. Go ahead.
Right,
I'll talk to the advisory panel.
All right. Okay. I'll be right back.
How often does he do this advisory panel? This does not seem like very good hosting technique to me. I'm not here to judge. I've kind of been out of the podcast game for a minute, but this just seems kind of like, I mean, it's Jeff, right? So you kind of expect a certain amount of like just tomfoolery. But this, if I was you, I wouldn't put up with it. Oh, he's back. I'm going to stop talking shit. So yeah, so that's why, like, in a lot of ways, Jeff has been a very good dear friend of mine, and I love him to pieces. He's just the best.
Fantastic. Yay. The furnace seems to work.
Oh, good. That's timely.
Nice.
Yeah, so for those, all we did was help. Like, just VR, the frame rate, you know, has to be like 90 or 120. Right. So people, and that's all we did is we help optimize those ones to get it to 90 or 120, if I remember right. So very little on those, but like, you know, we did do Skyrim for the Switch, which was kind of like, that was one where we did virtually everything on, you know, Bethesda was there. They're riding along with us, but that was kind of our responsibility to get that done. And so, yeah, it's always interesting, like, when you're in a custom engine, you know, because, like, what you eventually figure out with all that stuff is, like, oh, there's only, like, 3 ways to do a renderer, and there's 2 kinds of audio middleware everyone use, and, like, every engine is just some version of those cobbled together.
Yeah.
And it's all the glue stuff that makes it good or bad or whatever. And so once you've seen enough of those, you kind of know what you're getting into. And by that point, we had seen enough of everything to kind of know. And so Skyrim was a really fun project for us on the Switch. Like, Bethesda was a joy to work with. And
nice.
That was, you know, we were early. I think we were maybe the first third-party dev in America to have Switch hardware.
Oh, cool.
If I remember right.
Yeah.
And so it was just a very exciting time, and that project, we're all super happy with how that came out. So.
Yeah, no, definitely. It seems like people were. I remember trying it and going like, it's crazy that this game runs on this little ass thing.
Well, that's the thing. So it's like that's the thing about Switch, right? It's like if you compare that to like the Switch, somewhere in the power spectrum, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like between PS3 and PS4,
right?
You know, Xbox 360 and Xbox One. The Switch is somewhere in between there,
mm-hmm.
right? And it ran on these. It ran on both of them.
Right. Yeah.
So getting it to work somewhere in between, like that it's more about like it's like the challenges in that game were there were performance challenges to be sure, but like
sure, yeah.
It was more about like how do you make this a Switch game, you
mm-hmm.
know, and not like just like a tacked on kind of Garbo thing.
You add amiibo support, you know, you make sure, you know, put Yoshi in it like that. I mean, that's
just
the
like
easy
that.
stuff, right?
Amiibo, you throw amiibo support in there.
Yeah, done. But, you know, just VR in general, obviously has been, I mean, I just realized not that long ago that we've kind of been, it's basically been a decade now of like consumer grade VR kind of being back, if you count kind of the initial Rift release and all of that. It feels like that's just, you know, we talked about AI being kind of like Web3. Like there are parts of VR, at least from the funding perspective back in the day, that almost seems like a similar grift to me. Like, where are you at with VR? Do you think that there's any... Like it seems like that there's interest there. Obviously, Sony just put out a new headset that's like very well made. But I guess like, what do you think about that market in general? Do you think it's going to go anywhere? Do you think it's going to blow up and get big or anything like that?
Yeah, so part of our business model, right? Our business model is like basically to stay in business.
Right.
Right. Like whatever it takes to stay in business, right?
Yeah.
And a long time ago, I figured out like I'm not smart enough to know what's going to be successful and what's not.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Like I learned a valuable lesson from the Kinect. Right.
Sure.
Like we started helping out Phosphor and Microsoft with Kinect Adventures. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone's like, oh, this Kinect, I don't know about it. I don't know if the consumers want it. I don't know if the tech is there or whatever. And like a lot of people are like, man, maybe you shouldn't do that, Dave. You know, maybe you shouldn't do that. But I'm like, what's the worst? You know, they're paying us. Like, let's make it as good as it could be and see what happens. And then from our work on Kinect Adventures, we got to do a prototype with Gore Verbinski's crew, that Matter prototype that you can Google and see stuff about that. That was super fun. Mm-hmm. And that turned into us pitching Racketeer and that getting signed. And then us doing a good job on Racketeer. That turned into Killer Instinct for us.
Right.
Right. And so, like, if you're asking me, like, what do I think about VR? I'm like, I would love to do more VR stuff because who knows what will come from it for Iron Galaxy. Right. And that's the degree to which I think about these things. I don't care in a lot of ways if this thing X is going to be successful or not, because whatever, like, what Iron Galaxy will get out of working on anything is we will hopefully get more capable, right? Mm-hmm. We will build better business relationships, and if it ends up being successful, then we have experience on a successful platform, right?
Right.
And oh, by the way, we didn't have to spend our own money to do it. And so, I don't really have a great answer to that question for you. Like, it seems like VR is like, you know, I know Quest 2, they were selling them as fast as they could make them.
Right.
But I also know there's a lot of developers out there that are getting deals signed for VR, but not a lot at our size and scope and size that we do it at. Mm-hmm. And so it feels to me like there's a pretty decent ecosystem for developers out there, but I'm not super well versed in it. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. It's hard from the, you know, because everything I heard about VR at this point, at least from the funding side or whatever, is like a little bit out of date. So it just seems like there was that gold rush there early on where everyone was just throwing money at it, and then suddenly it was like, oh, no one is showing up to fund these bigger projects anymore. And
I met a developer. Yeah, I met a developer at GV. I didn't meet. The developer we used to work with like 10 years ago, and we still are friendly with. like we're having coffee at GDC, and they're like, no, we're pivoting to be 100% VR.
Oh wow.
It's like,
Cool.
this is smart. It's a smart team, a smart crew. Like they wouldn't do that if there was not some reason to do that, right? And so, like it's the opposite of what we do. We're never all in on anything, you know.
Right. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so it's like I believe there's still funding happening out there, and yeah,
Cool.
all that stuff. So
I guess that kind of brings us to Kyle, who wrote in and said, "What's the biggest business change that you've seen in the industry since you started, and what industry change has affected you the most personally?"
I should have looked at these questions ahead of time. You're right. You're absolutely right. That's a deeper one than I was ready. Like, if I had to say the biggest one for me personally, I think the biggest change for the industry that I've seen is just the consolidation that's happening.
Right.
Right. And the consolidation that's happening around and what's driving it, stuff like Game Pass, stuff like everyone needs their own content, exclusive content, right? And that drives consolidation. And that has really changed my perspective on the industry because, like, part of this too is just that we're more established now and we're kind of seen as experts in our field in a lot of ways. And like, so it's just kind of easier for us to get work. But like, 8 years ago, there was so much more competition for everything. Like, whether you're pitching an original thing or you're trying to help out on Diablo 3 for the Switch or whatever, like, it's just, there was just a million more developers out there right now,
Right.
And,
yeah.
and now, like, they get gobbled up by keywords or they get gobbled up by Saber or whoever it is today, right?
Right.
Kind of doesn't, like, that's been the biggest change for us. It's kind of gone from like the little startup trying to figure it out to one of the largest in North America that's still independent. Bungie's sold, Gearbox is sold.
Right.
I think Behavior is still bigger than us.
Right.
But like, it's like that's been the consolidation is the biggest change I've seen, and what it means for us personally is just like, our it's just our place in the industry is really kind of like we have a front row seat for everything that happens now, and we never had that before, and it's pretty exciting.
Yeah. So with less competition out there, is there ever? I mean, it seems like you're hiring up at a time when a lot of companies are, well, maybe not hiring up, but you have open positions at a time when a lot of companies are being pretty skittish. Is this just kind of the nature of the way the business has been run? Is just like, hey, we're going to be careful, we're going to be smart about it?
Yeah, I've always like, there's obviously exceptions to this. Like Supergiant's a great exception, right? Supergiant, all they do is make amazing games that sell, right? So
easy.
That's all they do.
Yeah,
right?
Just bangers.
Most people can't do that, right? And I would argue over a long enough timeline, Supergiant will eventually maybe lay an egg too. Good news for Supergiant, they probably have money in the bank to weather that storm, right?
Sure.
But if you look at the other end of the spectrum, people that started maybe had one successful game or none, and then they have one that just doesn't find the market, right? It's a good game, but it just doesn't find an audience. Like, they don't have an option of what to do, right?
Right.
And so, like, but for pitching services, unlike pitching a video game, like, making games is getting harder, not easier, right?
Right.
And people need more help than ever. And so, if you're like, I believe anyway, there's always going to be a market for someone saying, hey, let us help you make your game.
Right.
And so I think like the people getting into the space now are going to find it's incredibly hard to get established because there's people like us who have been doing it for 14 years, and you're essentially competing with us, and you can only compete on price. You can't say you're better. You can't say you're going to be more consistent. You can only compete on price with us, and that's going to be very, very challenging for anybody. But for us, it's more right now about timing and opportunity than anything else. Like I remember when Adam started, he's like, "Who's our competition? Who do Adam's been here 6 years now. It's like blink of an eye, right? But like,
Jesus, real man, God,
yeah.
Okay,
He's like, I want who's all in our competition. Like we don't think about it like that. Like we're just out here golfing. Like all we worry about is our score. We don't worry about what anyone else shot that day. That's all we're doing. And so, I don't know if that answers your question or not, but that's kind of how we think about it.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And let's see. I think this is the last question from the advisory panel here. Actually, no, we got a couple here. Kaylin says, "Hey, Dave, longtime push-up club member."
Oh, nice.
Big fan of the ethos of Iron Galaxy. A friend of mine who works there says it's the best studio he's ever been a part of.
Yay!
Would love to know your thoughts on the emergence of the influencer becomes the publisher act that has come as of late. As a games marketer myself, I see a lot of commercial benefits to this approach, both in the awareness to conversion creation and breaking some of the trappings of typical marketing hubris, but also have some concerns of the effects it might have on the studio's personal agency and actually developing the game. Would love to get the take, your take on this. So yeah, I mean, if you haven't, there's cases where there's people that are more closely in my kind of chair that are saying, "Hey, we're gonna get out there and start a publisher, and we're gonna sign deals and put out some games."
I don't know enough about any of those operations to comment like intelligently. But
I don't know anything specifically about any of their operations either. It's more just like conceptually.
Generically, what I would say is like about 10 years ago, like for a long time when I was getting started, making a game was one of the hardest things you could do. There weren't great dev kits. You needed extreme technical skill. There weren't off-the-shelf engines you could get, like Unity, Unreal, whatever, to help you do it. And about 10 years ago, maybe even a little bit longer, it actually became harder to sell a game than make a game.
Right.
And publishing.
What do you think caused that? Is it just like we talked about stores earlier? Is it just because so many more started coming out? Or
no, it's just that it got easier to make games.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just that it got easier to make games, and then that the fact that it got easier to make games means more games got made, which made it harder to sell games.
Okay.
So it's kind of like it's like one of these curves where it's like they by naturally when one goes up, the other has to go down, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And publishing, we tried publishing a couple years ago, and had really.
I mean, if Adam's been there for 6 years, I'm going to say it was more than a couple of years ago when you were publishing games.
Maybe eight years ago. Yeah, and it's the hardest thing we ever tried to do.
Yeah.
Publishing is such a challenging business, and whether you're an influencer or someone else coming from a different space, good luck is all. Because it is impossibly hard job, and I'm glad we tried to publish the games because it gave me a new respect for a lot of the challenges publishers face every day.
Right.
And I've also I think in a perfect world we could develop that skill and we could not be reliant on anyone else for our success or failure or whatever. But I also now have an incredibly healthy respect for the challenges that set of jobs entails, and
it's not just show up with the money and
I'm gonna hire
collect milestone bills.
It's fucking impossible. And so I saw the thing with Shroud is working closely with splash damage and all that, and it's not exactly what you're talking about, but that to me makes a little more sense than Mr. Beast is gonna make a game or whatever. I don't know, but it's
or just sign a game, or just say hey, I'm taking pitches over here for games, or
just really, really, really hard. And good luck.
Yeah. And then the last question from the advisory panel, who definitely wants the smoke. Robert says, "I'd love to know any good spots for food and or drink in Orlando."
So I haven't been to Orlando that much during COVID.
Yeah.
There's a new ramen spot I heard that's amazing. I think it's called Domu.
Okay.
So that's what I've heard. What else do I got for you? Gnarly Barley. If you're in a beer, they have a bunch of kind of not common beers there and really good sandwiches. They're a little out of the way. It's not, I wouldn't say it's Orlando proper. It's South Orlando, but those would be the two off the top of my head I got for you.
Cool. All right. Well, if you got the time, I got some other news and some other stuff going on. You want to hang out and talk about it?
I'm gonna hang out for a bit longer. Yeah.
Okay.
Let's do it.
All right.
Let's pretend like I'm unemployed for a day. Let's go for it.
Great. Awesome. I have spent a good chunk of time since Friday playing Resident Evil 4, which just came out again. And this is the first time I have played Resident Evil 4 and actually enjoyed any part of it.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, Resident Evil 4 is one of my, like, I don't want to say desert island games, but it's the game that, like, it's the game that made me get horror games.
Yeah, this is maybe in danger of doing that for me too, in a way, but I'm not sure. But so the other thing I realized is around the last time they remade it, when they put it back out on the Wii and some of the other stuff, is I realized that when that original game came out, being colorblind meant I couldn't see the red dot sight at all. And so I played it.
Slight
I was like,
problem.
I was like, I don't know why you people keep saying this game's amazing. The shooting is absolute trash.
Yeah. What
the hell is wrong with you? This is almost worse than the previous Resident Evil games, because at least I could aim at targets and hit them there.
Yeah.
And didn't realize until kind of after the fact, I was like, oh, okay, there's like a total facet of this that just like accessibility wise is just like missing for me. And so going back to it now, obviously, like they've made quite a lot of changes. It's not as dramatic as some of the other Resident Evil remakes they've done, but getting back to it and just being able to kind of appreciate it and hit targets and some of this other stuff, I'm like, yeah, no, there's aspects of this that are really neat, but parts of it that are corny in a way that a game that was originally conceived all those years ago kind of still has a little bit of that, going on with it, you know.
Yeah, I definitely am gonna play the remake, because 4 for me is like, Daryl. You met Daryl before.
Yeah.
So Daryl and I, we both loved 4, and we both like. I remember we both played it at the same time, I think, and we both like went through that first village part.
Yeah.
And we're just like we were like the next day at work we were just talking about it like for I don't know how, but it's like, okay, this is our shit. And there was a period there where midway when they started on Unreal 3, I think it was between Blitz 1 and Blitz 2. And it wasn't clear that Blitz 1 was going to do well enough to warrant a sequel. They weren't sure what they wanted to do with us. They're like, hey, just figure out Unreal 3. Daryl and I were going to like recreate the village from RE4. That's like how into RE4 we were, right?
Yeah.
Never ended up happening for a variety of reasons, mostly laziness, but like I am really eager to jump in, and I've just heard nothing but amazing things about the remake. So, like if you found any, because all I've seen online is like the quality's through the roof. Has that been your experience as well, or is it?
Yeah, totally. And playing it on PC has been really nice too. It's a beautiful looking game. I mean, it's like it's the lighting is fantastic. It runs well, which is something that's been kind of concerning in some PC ports lately. But like, yeah, runs great, looks really nice, like really nice hair, like all, just every bit about these environments they look fucked up, grimy, wet, the good reflections, good puddles, like all the little bells and whistles that help make all those environments really kind of come to life in the grimmest way possible. I was really taken with just like I found myself like I was streaming it last week, so you can go watch that video on YouTube. But like I found myself like multiple times, and I never do this, but like I stopped and just like looked around. Like I did this with Horizon VR because there was just elements of that was like, I don't think this is I'm not enjoying this as a video game, but god damn, it's beautiful to look around in VR. But like I found myself doing that here too, of just like I'm gonna stop and look at like, man, the light coming through these trees looks crazy.
Nice.
Just like elements of that just like from a technical perspective, like that RE engine, like Capcom. Yeah. Man, they're just doing some cool shit.
I'm excited to just meet my friend little tiny Cervantes again. I can't wait. I'm ready to go.
Yeah, I saw some complaints, people saying like, oh, you can't kneecap them as easily, or it's not like kneecap, roundhouse kick, shoot them in the leg or whatever. Like that there's elements of that kind of changed or little bits and pieces. But I think that's most of the criticism I think I've seen has been relatively light stuff.
All right.
There.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah. Hey, speaking of PC ports, just it feels like we've hit a bit of a rough patch with that stuff. I wonder if you have any, like, working in the port business. I'm not going to say like, hey, talk shit about people that are out there doing ports who are not you, but like, it just feels like there's been some rough stuff lately. Either like, hey, one console runs way better than the other. Like, there's just some disparity there that seems like it shouldn't be there. Do you feel like studios are still kind of getting used to new consoles? Are we still in these like early days of figuring those things out? Like what's going on out there? It feels a little weird.
Yeah, I guess I don't share that view. I think it's always been weird and hard.
Okay.
And like I'm always kind of just like anytime something gets released that maybe is like a little rough around the edges or not, like, it's just freaking hard, man.
Yeah.
And it's not an excuse to the consumer. Like the consumer shouldn't have to care about that. And then,
right.
I'm not asking for sympathy, right? But like, if you're asking for my perspective on like, what's going on, I'm just like, yeah, man, it's just freaking hard and getting harder. Like the bar for quality is accelerating faster than the price for the product. Right.
Right. Yeah.
And we get better and faster making games all the time, but like it's just hard. It's like the whole $70 debate for a game thing. It's just like, games they can't stay the same price forever. It's just not how the world works, right? Like,
right.
Cars aren't still $8,000. Like,
sure, yeah.
So it just, but we're still charging the same shit, and people want more and more quality. It's just getting harder and harder. So, like, I don't personally share the view what you said. That I think it's always been. There's always examples you can point to of something that's a little rough here and there or whatever.
Right.
But like, yeah, I just think it's that.
Okay. Yeah. I guess like, well, you talk about, game development getting harder. Sometimes it feels like all of these GDC or, like Unreal, like Epic will get out and make a bunch of announcements about like, look at this when we've got an asset store. Like a lot of it feels like it's targeted at like, hey, we're trying to make it easier to make games. Do you feel it's like, is maybe like the lower end, the smaller studio, lower end is a shitty way to put it, but like the kind of smaller team, is it maybe getting easier for them? Are the tools getting more democratized in ways that help them, but still, if you're trying to make something at a high level of quality, a full-fledged $60, $70 product, is that just getting crazier and crazier?
Yeah, so my comments were more directed at like, oh, hey, we're sim shipping on like 6 platforms.
Right, yeah.
And like, not making this like bespoke thing for one thing or whatever. But like, it's, it's when I say it's getting harder, it's that the tools are getting better all the time. The asset store stuff is great for so many, for a lot of developers. Like tools are getting better, engines are getting better. Like Unreal gets better every single year. It's a great place to make games. But like the part of it that isn't factored into that calculus is just the competitive landscape.
Sure. Right.
Is getting it's just fierce. It's just fierce out there. And
yeah.
So to compete just takes more and more and more and more money. And if you're trying to compete at scale with maybe, you don't have access to that top tier level of funding, you either have to be God tier planners or something's got to give,
Sure. Right. Yeah. Have you been playing much of anything lately? Have you, like I've been playing RE4.
Just been doing
nice.
a bit, the Hitman, what's the new thing called?
Freelancer.
Yeah, I just been doing that over and over. The big thing I played before that, I got through Horizon Zero Dawn.
Cool.
I played through the first one about 3 years ago, and then I played through this one, and that is my new favorite open world franchise. I freaking love those games.
Nice.
Then a lot of Rumbleverse in between there and Hitman, but lately it's just been like the Hitman stuff's interesting because it's like there are some missions that just feel unfair, but it's okay,
right?
Because it's like You got to blaze up a room full of people and get out somehow. You just got to figure, like
Yeah, it ain't gonna be pretty if you want to do this one, but
I was doing I was doing one yesterday where it was it was like one of the not the mini bosses, but one of the ones leading up to. So there's just one target, and it was in the China map, and it was like the lowest level of. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but anyway, there's this above part. City part to the map,
right?
And then there's like this technology base where they're doing all this biolab stuff. At the lowest level, some random ass scientist is the one I gotta kill.
Yeah,
surrounded by like 4 guards or whatever. And but they also have like this series of like tunnels that connect different parts of it. And I'm like, I bet the AI can't get in these tunnels because they can't. And so I was just like hiding, like poking, like blazing. Like, okay, that's what it took for this one.
Yeah,
that's what it took for this one. I freaking adore it so much. I'm gonna play some more today. I love that game.
Nice. Yeah, it's like I don't know, everything, that whole trilogy is so. I was talking about it again not that long ago. It's so crazy how good that thing is.
They delivered at such a high level for so long, and also. Again, I don't know anything. That's one developer I actually don't know anybody at, and so I don't. But like, in seemingly impossibly adverse business conditions as well.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Like, how did you do that?
Like change publishers and still try to make this connected trilogy that goes in one thing, and it's like you see the story where they're just like, yeah, well, Square Enix had the store ID on Sony, so we were just like, just like the number of weird. Like technical and logistical hurdles they had to get through to make that thing happen.
Yeah. It's just I'm really looking forward to the Bond game they're doing.
Yeah, me too.
Anything they do, I think pound for pound, like if Bond comes out and it's like anywhere close to the quality of Hitman, they will officially become my current favorite developer.
Yeah. I'm not like the biggest Bond fan in the world, but I still feel like it's just an IP that gets so rarely realized in games in terms of just like, dude is a spy. He's not a first person shooter, man. There's like more to being James Bond than walking around corners and blazing fools. And I don't know, like seeing Hitman and thinking about what they could do with that is super exciting, man. Oh gosh.
They're the real deal, and in IO I trust.
Yeah. I am with you. I was not always that way about IO Interactive, but man, they have made some amazing video games.
Yeah.
Let's see.
I changed one of my takes.
Yeah.
I used to think that Sapienza was the best map.
Yeah.
And I've changed my mind after playing a lot of Freelancer.
Okay.
So Sapienza, I think one of the reasons I liked it is it had the best set pieces, right? Like, you can start off in the casket and be dead, and all that shit. It was just amazing.
Just a lot of like crazy, just fun, yeah.
And so I think from single player content, Sapienza is still probably like top tier, if not the best map. But if I was going to reshuffle things for Freelancer mode, Sapienza is actually a little too big for Freelancer.
Oh, sure.
And I wonder if that's one of the reasons it doesn't show up as frequently as the other ones, or what's going on with that. But I've kind of been rethinking my map hierarchy with Freelancer mode in mind, and I haven't firmly established anything, but I used to it's.
Where are you leaning?
Well, part of it is like I really like New York. New York's great. I really like because there's a lot of ways to get to every level in New York.
So kind of no matter what they throw at you, you can kind of always know how to get there efficiently.
Paris is the same kind of thing. Like Paris, it takes a lot of work and a lot of time to get the Helmut Kruger gear. Like if you want to go that route, but like it's if you want to do it, then you have access to the whole map and you just kind of do it stress free. So like I think those are probably two of my favorites.
Nice.
Where some of the ones I don't like are the ones like Mumbai. I think is really hard. Like it's a random person in a crowd. It's like, what are you gonna do? You know,
Right.
It's just like, yeah.
Yeah, I think there was an elusive target there once that I remember just early on just being like, oh man, this is a bit too much.
I believe I sniped that one if I remember right. So
that would make sense.
I was in business there. Yeah,
nice.
Putting in the work.
Yeah,
but yeah.
A batch of news happened over the last week. Let's see here. Ubisoft has pulled out of E3 despite being like the one company that everyone finally nailed down, because Eve gave some quote, well, if E3 is happening, we will be there, and then E3 had to be like, well, E3 is definitely happening, and Ubisoft had to be like, well, then I guess we'll be there. As of yesterday, apparently not. They are pulling out, and they're going to do their own event. I guess the day after the Microsoft thing. So they're still going to be in LA putting on a show. They're just not necessarily going to be a part of the show floor. This just seems like an ROI thing increasingly for all of these publishers. Like, what are they getting out of E3? I love E3, but also every year I feel like, even before the pandemic, every year I feel like there were all these conversations we had on the couch about like, man, this seems like a lot of money everyone's spending to do this in a world where people just like to watch live streams.
Yeah.
You think this?
I think E3 can't die. Like, if it hasn't died yet, it's not gonna die.
Sure.
Like, it can't be killed. It's like the cockroach or whatever. But like, I do like the thing that the E3 used to be magic about, right? Is like, I could go play a game before it comes out.
Right.
Right. And that was the only place in the world you could do that.
Yeah.
And then that's been, effectively duplicated by several things, like stuff like PAX or just, whatever.
Or just demos. I mean,
demos,
there's so much more stuff, open betas, and there's so many more things like that happening.
And so they just, this show has not evolved with the times, and I think there's still a place for a big dumb show in LA. I think there's still a place for that. But they just have to figure out, like, okay, what can we do better than PAX? Or what can we do better than whatever? And just lean into that. So I actually don't even know who's going and who's not going, because I don't pay any attention anymore. Cause
it's not your It's not like the Iron Graphics is gonna have a booth there.
It's just impossible. Like, it's like I think for the amount of time people spend talking about E3 and is it happening or is it going to be crappy or is it, like, the amount of energy people spend talking about it surpasses the actual value the show has held for a very long time. Right.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of like, what are we talking about? Like, what do we?
Yeah, I think for me, it's become this like nostalgic thing of just like, well, I went to all of them, and I feel honor bound to continue to go to all of them. And,
if not me, then whom?
Yeah, honestly, it's disgusting, but like that's the trap I've fallen into. And so I just look at it and go, like, it's funny because, like, I think for the people out there watching this, or for anyone out there that like follows game news, we're going to get to that week in June, and there's going to be a ton of announcements because everyone's going to still have their live stream and their event or whatever else. So it's like this weird hand wringing about this thing that, like, it's not really going to have a massive impact on the way people consume game news. It just kind of spreads it out a little bit more.
Yeah.
And as someone, as someone who has aspirations for how I like to cover trade shows and want to kind of get back to doing a little something when the sun goes down, it like there's a part of it's just like, well, this is not the year for that.
I do think the thing that was, if you want to blame anybody, blame Nintendo, right? Because, like,
sure,
Nintendo is the first one to do, like, hey, we actually don't need to do a big E3 press conference. We can just do a Nintendo Direct.
Yeah.
At least that's the way I remember it. Like, maybe I'm wrong.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's definitely that during the pandemic, but almost, Sony pulled out of E3 before the pandemic even happened. They were just I thought
Nintendo started doing their own show before. Anyway, whatever. Whoever the first one was.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, the first one was like, it was Activision in like, was that 07 or 08 or something? Like, I remember they pulled out of the show and then just got a hotel nearby, and they're like, hey man, we're showing Call of Duty. Do you want to come see it? I'm like, yeah. Yes, I would. Yes, I would. Yes, I guess I should probably go see this Call of Duty game and see what that's all about.
All right, so my
though,
thesis appears deeply flawed then. So
it's been a lot of companies over the
Yeah.
years, but to me, it was like when Sony had their last big year where they had their press conference and everyone had to walk through like this big, like Last of Us inspired set to get there, and people were like, "This is like, what are we doing?"
Yeah.
I think that was probably a moment for them where they were like, we spent a lot of money, and then people were just like, show us the games. So what if we instead did a live stream? Or what if instead we went to Paris Games Week or whatever? You know, Sony is Sony. But you know, Nintendo obviously would build their big booth and spend a bunch of money building, like, hey, we put a tank in the booth because we built New Donk City in the booth.
Yeah.
Come check it out. And
the lines of the Nintendo booth were always bonkers.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that was always a head scratcher to me. Like, man, you come to E3 and you wait like 5 hours in a line to play a game for 2 minutes. Like,
yep. Yeah, that was always the weird thing about like when they said like we're gonna let the public in. And I was like, you better add some more kiosks because the other thing that happened is like you talk about like, oh, it's the only place to go play a game before it comes out, but increasingly all the games you actually wanted to see were behind closed doors and appointment only. So if you were just a show goer, like if you were a dev at another studio, they were just like, well, I don't know anybody. I can't call in favors. But I do have an E3 badge. The E3 badge doesn't get you access to all that much.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and so even I think from an industry perspective, it got weird. But anyway, yeah, it's now, you know, Andy Robinson from Video Games Chronicles out there today saying like, you know, that there's just a lot of additional kind of bad chatter going around. And at this point, he wouldn't be surprised if the whole thing got canceled, which is crazy to think about here in March. You know, people are already making travel plans and, you know, press outlets that have already been decimated by layoffs and already have no budget to spend are like, what are we doing? And that's a really crazy place to be here almost in April. So they're going to have to figure something out pretty soon. What else is going on? MultiVersus, the game most likely to be confused for Rumbleverse from name alone, is decided to follow it. They're shutting down. They are shutting down in June, and that they're looking to come back in early 2024. They made it about a year, all told. They're technically on season 2. They're going about this in kind of a weird way. They have decided they have always called MultiVersus an open beta, and so their announcement was like, open beta is coming to an end, and with it, the game's shutting down, and we'll be back in early 2024. It's a really wild way to go about doing it.
Dirty Mike.
Yeah, he's here. He gave me a big thumbs up, and he pointed at the ground like we're here, and then went back out there. So hopefully the roof will be taken care of now. This is an interesting way to do it. They are not going to do refunds because they say any money you spent will be still good when the game comes back. And this is all like they were supposed to roll out season 3 like this week, and instead they're announcing that the game will shut down in June for at least 6 months, if not more. I guess it's kind of like you said, man. It's fucking brutal out there.
I think like there's another universe where Rumbleverse tries something like this too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like where first off, just hats off to those devs. Like that game is, I really like that game. I
don't normally like games like that, and I think just between the IPs they had and just like it was just a fun ass game.
And so hats off to them first and foremost. And you know, but like if Rumbleverse just didn't, you know, disappear entirely, something like this probably would have happened, right? And so like it's one of those things where it's like hey, we need to recognize that some of what we're doing is not working for everybody.
Yeah.
And we need some time to adjust some things and fix that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And are we just going to keep, you know, spending money on the game every day while we fix it? Or does this make more sense? And so I really hope it works out for them. I hope whatever they're trying to accomplish between now and the relaunch, or the coming out of beta, you know, because I would love to see this work. Because like, you know, we talked about doing something like this for our game, and just ultimately concluded it didn't make a ton of sense. But like, yeah, Godspeed, and I wish them tons of luck. This is it's really tough, and yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
hope
think.
fingers crossed for
Yeah,
MultiVersus.
I think the biggest thing that I saw them running into was just a cadence of content releases when it came to new characters. Like it seemed like season one they had a really good flow with that stuff, and then they got to season two and it was like, the characters are kind of slowing down a little bit, and some of the other stuff is getting delayed here and there. But it's I can only really think about it through the lens of like a website, and I've definitely been parts of website operations where it's like, man, what you really need to do is shut this thing down for like 6 months, rebuild it from the ground up, make it actually good, because you've got so much, whether it's tech debt or just bad user features, or just like the sites become a mess because you're constantly just building things onto it over time. Right. But you can, you can't just shut down a website, then there's no revenue coming in, everybody gets late, it just doesn't work. And so it was always this feeling of like, well, you can't rebuild the car while it's trying to race down the track. And so I wonder if this is this probably gives them a situation where they're talking about netcode and matchmaking improvements, like pretty, reworking the progression, like fairly sizable changes to the game. And that they say they learned a lot over the course of the game being out. And I wonder if it's just a case where like they actually get to take the car off the track and do what actually needs to be done, instead of just like this constant fire of just like, okay, just put this character out. This character's broken. Fuck. All right. Well, like just, yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely, don't have any level of detail about what they're going through, but just think about like, on when we were talking about something like this for Rumbleverse, like the calculus was like, okay, we have budget for X people, right?
Yeah.
And if the game is live, we need Y people just to keep it live and fix bugs every day and push the content and do whatever. So then we have X minus Y people left to fix problems, right?
Right.
And that would take Z months. It's like, okay, well, you can do the math on that and figure out if it makes sense or not,
Right.
And so I think it's just it turns into a budget and a headcount and a development bandwidth problem at that point, right? So yeah, it's I thought I will say this. I think if you really love Rumbleverses, if you I did it to myself. If you love MultiVersus and you're worried about it, I think like this tells me they think they can fix what's wrong.
Right.
Right. Like I think if they didn't think they could fix what's wrong, they wouldn't do this.
Right. They would probably just be shutting. They'd probably just be closing down at this point.
Yeah. Well, maybe something or just whatever, keep it limping along. I don't know what they would do.
Well, yeah. Player counts kind of like, not that, we don't really have insight into the console side of things, but looking at the Steam player counts, you're like, this is not where it needs to be.
But yeah, if you're a fan of MultiVersus, I think you should take some heart in the fact that they probably think they can fix what they view as wrong with the game.
Mm-hmm.
And that should give you some good vibes, hopefully.
Yeah. In other kind of shutdown news, the Wii U and 3DS eShops closed down yesterday. This is, this shouldn't happen at the same time. I don't know that I was ever surprised by the idea of Nintendo shutting down some of the shops on these consoles. They removed support to use credit cards on them a while ago, which, probably helped them with some security risk and some other kind of exposure there, I would guess. But, they're letting people re-download the games that they already purchased, and they're saying that that'll be happening for the foreseeable future is the verbiage that they have given out. But, there's something like 1,000 games now that are no longer available in any other format. How do you feel about it? Like, this seems like something where I am a little bit up in arms about it. I think there are people that are more up in arms about it than even I am from like a preservation perspective. At the same time, I think I look at like the business reality end of it and go like, no one was buying this stuff. Like, would they, if these games were still selling, Nintendo would probably have found a way to keep it up and running.
Yeah.
But it's not like this is generating meaningful revenue for the developers or anyone involved, right? I mean,
yeah, I don't really have a strong personal opinion on this. Like, I'm not like, I really, like, I'm glad people out there care about game preservation, so I don't have to, kind of thing. Like, the history of this industry is important. and remembering the work everyone's did is important. But if I'm being completely honest, it's just not. It's not something that takes up a lot of my mental state.
Yeah, no, I definitely I know that about you. I knew as I was writing this down. We talked a little bit about it before, where you're an ever forward kind of guy.
Yeah, and it's just I guess this is just part of me that has the challenges of running a business.
Mm-hmm.
Is there's never going to be any part of me that can just think about the consumer experience.
Sure.
Like, I'm always going to be partially thinking about like, oh, I wonder what this alleviates for Nintendo or whatever.
Right.
And
sure.
so it just that plus my general not super personally dialed into this thing makes it kind of like I get it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Iron Galaxies has worked on situations where hey, we're working on bringing like Final Fight or the Street Fighter Third Strike and some of those games that like you could look at and go like, these are old ass games. They're not widely available in other forms, and you're kind of bringing them back and in a sense preserving them with new SKUs or whatever. Do you think that's
it's not strictly speaking game preservation, but
right. But in some terms, you have kind of worked on making games that have become difficult to play available again in some cases with online support and some of that.
Yeah.
Do you think that's, I mean, that stuff still happens? It feels like in a lot of ways that all the big games got remade and maybe they'll go away again. And, I guess we're at a point now where there isn't necessarily an easy way to play Third Strike online with rollback and everything all over again. But do you think that?
I guess like I don't, when we're thinking about stuff like that, we're not thinking about like whenever we're doing something like Third Strike, it's like, okay, if you love Third Strike, what do you care about? There's not like a bigger context for the decisions we make than that.
Yeah.
And so, in terms of like, like I would love still, like I think like to bring all that stuff that we did for Capcom to PC and Steam. Like I would love to do that to this day. Like I think that could, one, be profitable, and two, make a lot of sense. And then you wouldn't have to worry about this. But at the end of the day, that's one of the things that's you just have to kind of learn to live with when you're a third-party independent developer. Is you're often working on things you're not in control of, right? And
definitely.
And so maybe just for survival, I've turned that part of my brain off. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, maybe you could bring it to the arcade terminals inside of Street Fighter 6.
There you go. Yeah. They at this point they might want to use the other version they did for it. Street Fighter 3 is weird with everything that happened with that, but
cool. This game leaked out a couple of different ways, and it's been finally announced. Lego 2K Drive, kind of a clunky name in my view, throwing the brands up in the middle like that, but Visual Concepts is going to be developing this, and it's is being described in the early hands-on previews by outlets such as Eurogamer as kind of a mix of Forza Horizon and Mario Kart. This is out May 19th. This was the only thing about this that I wanted to know was, can I build a car from scratch? And it sounds like you can. That has always been cool. Yeah, that has always been my thing with all this Lego stuff. And even just the way Legos are popular these days is people buying sets and building them according to instructions. Feels like square dancing to me. Like, do you dance to listen to someone tell you how to fucking dance? Or do you want to fucking, jazz it up a little bit? So like that's the Banjo-Kazooie nuts and bolts fan in me is like, hell yeah. I will build the worst looking car. I will build the most pornographic car I could build. Yeah. And put it out there. But yeah, I don't know. Like I'm excited. There just are not a lot of driving games anymore.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about it, but that's true. There's not a lot of driving stuff. And there's the hardcore, there's the Forzas, and there's
EA's got a Need for Speed that they just put out last year. They took a couple of years off, but Ridge Racer is gone. It used to feel like that was like a good middle of the road game of just like, fuck it, man. Yeah, we're putting out a Blur is coming out, or Split Second, or like we just had a lot of different types of games.
F's in the chat for Ridge Racer, please.
Yeah.
Let's. I remember when that was like. That was like a technical showpiece game.
Yeah.
Like Sony's got new hardware. It's gonna have a Ridge Racer on it. It's gonna look amazing.
Yeah.
Remember the first one, the headlights popped up when you went in the tunnel. It's like, oh my god.
Oh, it moves, man. Yeah. And these tires are getting more round every year, and
the JogCon.
Yeah. I keep wanting to go back and actually play Ridge Racer Type 4, and I have a JogCon out there somewhere in the garage. But every time I've gone back to it, it's like, this is stylistically a beautiful game, but kind of hard to go back to some of that stuff. I remember even when the Vita was coming out, they had a weird Ridge Racer based tech demo that they did finally put out, but it wasn't even like, you didn't even drive. It was just like, look at this car, and if you hold down these buttons, it makes dubstep noises and flashing lights. And I'm like, this is the coolest thing. Like, they had all the launch lineup for the Vita and everything else, at their booth at E3. But like, the one thing I was like, holy shit, like messing with the Ridge Racer tech demo.
I missed that one. I'll admit. Yeah.
They eventually did put out, I think, like a free to play Ridge Racer on Vita that was not. It's like at some point they just decided they didn't want to make new tracks. They're like, hey, we only make one of these per console, so guess what? We can just take the same tracks, like gussy them up a little bit, and put them back out there. And it kind of, I don't know, I lost a little bit along the way. That's not the only build your own vehicle news this week. This morning, Nintendo released a new chunk of gameplay for The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Did you manage to see this morning? It was like a 10-minute video.
I don't watch any news stuff. It's just like if it's something I want to play, especially, I just don't watch it. So
I am increasingly with you, which is not great if you want to have a podcast
discourse. Yeah.
But I definitely, I reach a point, especially with like, hey, we've put out the 9th trailer for this game. Like, I don't care. I don't need. You don't need to do it. Stop it.
Yeah.
You've already sold me on the game. I'm not going to go watch it. But
we were talking about something earlier in this conversation. I was actually thinking literally this thought. I was wondering, like, is that a function of where I'm at in my gaming career, and just the fact I'm in the industry and I kind of know if I want to play a game based on just developer alone, or if I was 13-year-old scumbag Dave Lang, if I'd be like, no more trailers. I don't know how. Like, I'm curious about that.
I think I think part of it is like, I have become more patient with stuff, and I know. Well, I think the other thing is like delays and everything else and schedule changes. Like, there's a part of me that is, anytime they show a game off or try to commit to anything that isn't a full-on day and date, like, it's coming out Q4. Like, bullshit. No, it's not.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to even want to follow all of that stuff until the game's right around the corner. Like, I kind of like it's the way the last and more, I don't know, it's not necessarily a trend, but like, when you think about how most Mortal Kombat games got announced to when they shipped, it was this very long process. And then that last one they put out was a much tighter turnaround with way less work up to release, way fewer, like, here's our trailer. We have to do a weekly trailer with it. Guess what, guys? Johnny Cage is in this one. You're like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Like, Tekken's doing that right now. And who knows when that game's even coming out, but it feels like one trailer a week, 2 trailers a week come out. It's like, guess what, guys? We're putting Jack in this one.
Yeah.
And I watch it and go like, that's sick. Like, Jack looks fucking awesome.
That Jack trailer was amazing.
Yeah. But like, also, you don't need to show me anything else about Tekken 8 for me to know that, like, the day Tekken 8 comes out, I will be playing Tekken 8.
Right.
Like, from a selling the game perspective, I'm like, whatever, man. You don't need to tell me anything about the characters that are or not in it. I'm on board.
I did. Jack was the one, because I will watch fighting game trailers because like, I don't care about spoilers or whatever.
Right.
And like, I don't, it's like, oh, I wonder what they did to Jack. And like, Jack looks like he rips. That looks fun. Yeah. They
gave him a sick railgun for his super, and that looks fucking cool. And yeah, man. So yes, this 10 minutes of Tears of the Kingdom footage got out there, and I kind of like how they're really not saying much about the state of the world and the characters. Like, there's not a lot of story stuff that they've put out so far. And that either means there's not much to show or that they've done some really wild stuff. But either way, this whole trailer was focused on more mechanics. And like, yeah, it was just like, hey, here's some new abilities we put in the game. Now you can take weapons and you can take items and fuse them to weapons. So if you find a stick and you find a rock, you can use your magic glove to make them connect. And then you got a rock at the end of a stick. And guess what? That's more effective and doesn't break as easily.
Great.
Or, hey, Hey, what if you took a fucking door and attached it to the end of a stick? When you wave it, it creates wind and knocks people back.
Love it.
Or, hey, what if you took a long-ass pitchfork and put it at the end of a long-ass stick? I bet that'd be an even longer-ass stick with spikes on the end, wouldn't it? And so the whole thing was focused on them just showing that is the game now. They're like, hey, and by the way, do you want to build a raft? Connect some logs and get out and put it on the water and go. Like, just do it, man. And so it just ends up almost having this, like, Minecraft, or, like, Minecraft's a bad example, but like that creativity, way more sandboxy, way more, because that was the thing. Like, looking at the way people played that last Zelda game in a way that was not at all how I played it, where they're like, did you know if you freeze this thing and then hit it 22 times and then do this, it'll rocket up in the air and you can skip over, and just like all the creativity with that tool set, it really feels like they watched all that and said, well, let's just give them a bunch of weird tools. And they're crazy. One of them is like, hey, this one's called Ascend. And if you're standing somewhere and there's a ceiling above you and you could theoretically be standing on top of that ceiling, if you use this, you will just warp through any distance of rock, or you pop out of a cage and you'll just like crawl out of the ground like it was water up above. And you look at it and go like, that's insane. Like, what? Yeah. But it's just a bunch of cool, weird tools.
Awesome.
And that's literally all they showed. And it's just like, okay, no, yeah, awesome.
Yeah, you and I had slightly different opinions on the last Zelda game.
Yeah.
Like I adored that game very, very much. And I'm digging what I'm hearing out of you on this trailer. Like, give me more sandbox stuff to do. Give me more stuff to dick around with. And I'm not, mostly, if nothing else, there'll be a bunch of sick YouTube videos that come out of it.
Right.
So I'm here for it. Yes.
Yeah. It's like, it's that. What else? There's a time you can rewind time on a per object basis. So if the example they show is, hey, this rock fell out of the sky and look up there. There's a bunch of islands up there. It'd be cool if you could find a way up there. Anyway, stand on the rock and then rewind it.
Yeah.
And then it's just you just riding this rock up into the sky.
Yeah.
And so between that and then like, hey, by the way, all the vehicles in the last trailer, none of those are in the game. You can just make them. So again, a very Banjo-Kazooie nuts and bolts like approach.
Yeah.
Good to see its influence finally being felt by this godforsaken industry. Yeah, it's a bunch of really neat stuff that I wonder. Yeah, like you said, as someone who I thought that first game was cool, but didn't necessarily get all that much out of it. Like, I think my favorite part about it was the stuff that they haven't really shown any of is like the shrines. Like, hey, go in here and there's a cool puzzle thing to do. Like, if they just made a game that was a bunch of cool puzzle things to do, that would have been awesome too. But I look at this and go, yeah, bare minimum, it'll be another series of insane videos of people exploiting that tool set to do really wild things. And
that's a great example of like I just completely trust them to do the right thing with that game. Like, it's just like there's no, you can tell me anything, and even if it doesn't make sense to me right here, right now, I'd be like, I'm sure it'll be great.
Yeah. Okay. Well, here you can attach things to arrows now, and that will give the arrow properties. The example they showed was you get eyeballs as drops from other enemies. If you put an eyeball on an arrow, it becomes a seeking. It'll seek out targets and hit them.
Amazing.
Yeah. So it's just like, it's almost like this Scribble Knots thing of just like, I don't know, we put all this language in here with all these items and you'll put them together in weird ways and maybe you'll break a sequence and feel like the smartest person alive. But that's cool. It's a bunch of really neat stuff.
Yeah. It's I'm pumped now. Now I wouldn't watch it normally, but I'm gonna watch the trailer.
Yeah, so. You should give it a look. It's just like a bunch of it's that's all it is. It's a series of fascinating gameplay sequences using all these new tools. no part of it is just like, and here's the princesses, you know, like there's nothing that's like, here's the story. There's nothing about the state of the world. It's just, yeah, this enemy's got a fucking door and they're coming at you with it. What the fuck are you going to do about it? And it's pretty neat. Yeah. And let's see, that's about it for news. Microsoft is ending its Game Pass promotion. For the longest time, you could just sign up for Game Pass for $1. And then people were using weird things about like, well, if you buy 3 years of Xbox Live Gold and then spend $1, it'll all convert to Game Pass at this. And, there's a bunch of weird exploits for getting long-time Game Pass subscriptions that will probably go away alongside this. They gave a statement to The Verge and said, we have stopped our previous introductory offer for Xbox Game Pass Ultimate and PC Game Pass, and we are evaluating different marketing promotions for new members in the future. Seems like I'm kind of surprised that this dollar thing lasted as long as it did. It feels like something that would be like the first 90 days or something.
Yeah, I all I know about Game Pass is when they announced the Ultimate, I signed up for it at E3.
Yeah.
When they announced it, and I haven't looked back. That's all I know about Game Pass.
Yeah, that's pretty much where I was at with it as well.
It's such a good deal. It's stupid.
Yeah. Do you have any? There's a lot of. I don't know that I see too many developers kind of publicly doing this, but it's something that I think the press and people out there, like, there's just been a lot of hand wringing, where there's this situation where it's like, this deal feels too good. At some point, it's going to ruin video games, or it's going to go way up in like there's been this kind of constant like waiting for a shoe to drop. Do you feel any of that, or are you just like, whatever, man? Like, this is.
I think so. I think the shoe to drop for it. And this again, not based on any facts. This is just my just. I just don't know if there's that much. Like, with everyone going to something like this, like, there's just not that much content out there, and it's like they're going to burn through the content faster than they can replenish it. And like eventually they'll run out of developers to buy, and then what are you gonna like that like, yeah, it's like the value of Game Pass, like, they seem hell bent on increasing the value every single year with the Riot stuff. Riot stuff's amazing in there, right? Yeah. Like, and so but eventually, man, what do you do when you start to run thin at some point? And so,
or you've made all the deals, everyone already has all the League of Legends characters. You've either acquired the developers, or you've gone and like you said, hey, you've put a game on Game Pass, it's gone off of Game Pass. Do you wait 2 years and put it back on?
Yeah, I think that's a challenge that all this stuff is going to face, is like the value prop for the consumer. The consumers have gotten spoiled by this value prop, and if they can't keep it going, like, what does that do to the core business? That'd be my concern if I was them. But again, it's not based on any data. I don't know what they know, so maybe
yeah, cool. That's been it's been interesting, because I Microsoft has already been always been very much out there saying, like, no, like, we've had, and there's always a couple of developers that'll be like, hey, like smaller devs in some cases, that'll be like, Game Pass has been amazing for us, because it'll solve a discoverability problem. It'll put it in front of all those subscribers and say, like, hey, check this out, you maybe never would have otherwise. And then in some cases that'll lead to word of mouth that leads to theoretically sales on Steam or PlayStation or other platforms, or as just a bunch of weird. This business has always been strange. It's even weirder now.
Yeah, it's like everything else, right? It's like there's two ways. If you look at it like, oh, this is gonna be bad, but if you try to, like, it's just another possible path for success for a developer,
right? And
whether or not it's the right path for you and your game is for you to decide, Yeah. But there's enough success stories out there where it's like, you can't say it's not possible. You just have to determine if it's right for you and your game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cool. Let's see. I think that's going to just about do it for news. You got time to hang out for some emails, or you got to split?
I should probably split and do some actual stuff today.
Do some actual stuff. All right.
But it's been a pleasure. And
I figured as much.
Always.
Yes, and we'll look forward to Rumbleverse 2 coming out exclusively on phones from Netflix. No, what is
Yeah. We're trying our best to make that thing come back in some shape or form, right?
Awesome.
And so,
yeah. And then what? I mean, is there anything else that you're actively? You said that Last of Us just shipped, and you guys helped out a little bit.
Helped Naughty Dog just a wee bit on that.
Yeah,
one, just a wee bit. But yeah, it was fun. The Naughty Dog rocks. They're super.
Anything else announced that's in the works that you want? Anything you want to plug, man?
No, man, not right now. Just I want to plug good vibes, man. Everyone just be chill to each other and be nice to some rando today. That's what I want to plug.
All right, be nice to. I'll go out and tell Dirty Mike he's doing a fantastic job.
All right. This has also revealed to me that I miss you, Jeff.
Yeah,
we need to figure something out.
It was good to see you. Yeah. In LA, what was like 2 years ago?
Yeah, but then we're in a room with like 10,000 people, and it's
exactly. It was like we had half a conversation, and that was it. I miss PAX more than anything else for this stuff. It was always very low key for me. It was always super fun to like cook up weird schemes where you got bottles broken over your head.
Yeah.
And
whatever. Actually, what I miss more than anything else is just like when everything's done, just hanging out in the hotel room with the boys.
Yep.
That's the shit I miss more than anything else. But
definitely, that is where I am at as well. Well, maybe you'll make it out here for E3. Probably not.
Yeah,
probably not. Yeah. All right.
If E3 is happening, I will be there.
All right.
That's the Dave Lang promise.
You and Yves Guillemot.
Yeah. All right.
All right. Take care, Dave Lang.
Doki doki.
Bye.
Till next time.
See ya. All right, now I'm here all by myself in this weird different room. We're trying different, we're using to do the guest stuff. This is what I use to record Game Boys to Men with Glenn. And it's been more stable. The handful of episodes of that we recorded over Discord, and Glenn would always disconnect 2 or 3 times over the course of a broadcast. So we ended up moving to this external tool that is fine. It is currently only 720p because they charge more for 1080p. And so I was like, well, I don't know, for talking head stuff, maybe this 720p will be all right. I wasn't 100% sold on it anyway, but yeah, that's been part of me over these last handful of months, like kicking the tires on just like how to do more guest stuff. And so thank you so much for Dave Lang for coming on the show. We've been talking about it for a very long time. And finally, I got my shit together on my end to finally go like, hey, what you want to really actually do this? So that's awesome. I miss Dave. I miss Dave right now, and I just got finished talking to him for 2 hours, man. It's been weird, getting separated from all of the industry and stuff. I was definitely like last week between PAX East and GDC, I definitely was like looking at social media and just being like, oh man, everyone's there doing stuff. It'd be cool to do that, but it's just not the right time for me to get out there. And then also the other thing that happened is immediately following all of that was everyone going like, I got COVID again. And so yeah, I don't know. It's still a weird time, and with young kids at home and everything else, like it's hard for me to travel. But that said, I am heading out in a little bit here over the next. Well, I'll leave it non-specific. Over the next couple of weeks here, I am going to go see an unreleased video game in person, and I'm very excited to do that. That'll be a pretty cool thing to do. Yeah, so I don't know. It's like parts of the industry are kind of like snapping back into place, but everyone has to figure out what that means. And I know PAX had a mask policy and some of that going on to try to mitigate some of that. But yeah, I don't know. It's still such a weird thing. And I just, I've been so kind of off in my own world here, getting things off the ground and figuring out a bunch of other stuff that, I just haven't talked to anybody, in a very long time. And so it's, fantastic to talk to Dave Lang. Anytime You get to spend. I recommend it if you can swing it. If you can spend time with Dave Lang, I recommend you do it. He's a hell of a guy. Hell of a guy. Let's see what else there. We've got some emails here that have been piling up. Podcast@guard.bike is the email address you can send them into, and yeah, we will. I will take them and read them, and we will talk about them. Let's see here. Let me get them lined up here properly. I'm gonna move this over here to this other window so that I can still sort of see chat. And is Dave Lang on Cameo? I don't believe I can do. Is Dave Lang on Cameo? No, I don't believe he is. I don't believe he is. That'd be solid. I think that'd be funny. Ben in Leeds writes in and says, I've got the Crash Bandicoot masks tattooed on my wrists, and they have had quite literally 50 times more compliments than any other non-video game tattoo on my body, most of which took considerably more effort and expense. And what I'm saying about video game tattoos is don't get one if you don't want strangers constantly telling you, dude, I played that game when I was a kid too. It gets old. Yeah. We've been talking about tattoos, video game tattoos here and there lately. I just can't think of what tattoo would you get? I think I've had a couple of times over the years where I've been like, I like this thing, and I've said it before that like I came close a couple of times over the years, like I should get the Decepticon logo tattooed on myself, and then those Michael Bay movies came out, and I was like, oh, I don't want to be associated with any of that stuff. And so I, didn't get them. And that's always the problem with getting any kind of someone else's stuff tattooed on you, right? Like you never know when that thing is going to suddenly suck. And so that's I don't know. That's a tricky one. The Crash Bandicoot. I mean, that's cool. The little masks, like that's a pretty good one, I guess. I don't know if you like that thing enough, but yeah, it's the reason it is the reason why I own a Montreal Expos hat, which I purchased mine before I knew Dave, and I think it was an early thing. But like, man, this guy, I don't know that we ever discussed it ever, but I bought a Montreal Expos hat because I like baseball, but I don't want to talk to you about last night's game. I never want to talk to you about like how a team is doing this season, or how this person, like, oh yeah, about last night, this is blah, blah. And so having a hat for a team that no longer exists is a great way to do that. And you occasionally get people going like, oh, hell yeah, Expos or whatever. Like, and then I'm just like, yeah, man, Tim Raines. I love that dude. Because when I collected baseball cards back when I was a little kid, Tim Raines was playing for the Expos. and so that was always my reasoning behind that. But yeah, I don't know. Like it turned up. We were talking about it a couple of weeks ago when footage from Space World 2000 of me wearing a Tampa Bay Buccaneers jersey surfaced. And people would, I wore it because I was just in a big jersey phase anyway. And so I had like a throwback Expos. It was like the throwback jersey time, had my throwback Astros jersey and all this other stuff. And the problem you would have with that is like, again, it's a cool jersey, but I don't want to talk to you about the Astros. I don't want to be like, yeah, man, Biggio is, this is probably after Craig Biggio stopped playing for the Astros, honestly, but I don't remember. But the Bucks jersey, especially during football season, people will be like, "Oh, did you see the game? Oh, yeah." And you're checking out groceries or something. Someone's trying to talk to you about something that happened yesterday, and you're just like, "Yeah, man, hell yeah." This would happen to me. I had a Wu-Tang T-shirt, but Wu-Tang was written in the New York Giants font, like the football team. And so that would even happen where I was like wearing this thing and going like, I don't know, it's a Wu-Tang shirt, whatever. And people would try to talk to me about like the New York Giants. And I was like, and I'm like, what do you, because I didn't even realize like I was wearing anything. Like I knew, but like you're not in that mentality. And so someone's like coming to you and trying to talk to you about and you're like, what are you talking about? I was like, well, you're wearing the shirt. I'm like, this shirt says Wu-Tang, my friend. Like, Like, I am well aware that it is also the font of a football team, but that does not mean I like the football team. If you would like to talk to me about U-God or Master Killer or perhaps Wu-Tang Shaolin style for the PlayStation 1, then we can have that conversation. But brother, I do not want to speak to you about the New York Giants. It's the problem with sports jerseys. It's a lot of fun design work. That's why I bought World Baseball Classic jerseys, though some of those are a little harder to wear these days. Not a lot of people, even then, and there's a lot of footage of me out there wearing it, but these days, my China jersey is people are, I don't know, it's wild out there. This, we've got to ban TikTok because of China. I feel like there's like parts of the nation now that if I wore that jersey in it, people would try to jump me or something. I think I was stealing their Wi-Fi. Like if I was in Congress, for example, and then what were that? People are like, are you stealing my internet? That has been embarrassing. That happens every 5 years or something, right? Where there's like some technology-oriented inquiry on Capitol Hill, and every clip out of it is the most embarrassing thing on the planet. Where you've just got these people that are just like, well, the guy with this most recent batch with the TikTok stuff is this guy going like, well, you are tracking how pupils get dilated, and are you using these filters, or you are figuring out when pupils get dilated, and that is your algorithm is based on, and like all of this fucking cuckoo shit that he probably read on some Facebook group. What a disaster. Just a bonkers chunk of time of that, like watching the TikTok guy get grilled by absolute fucking idiots. I'll tell you, there are probably legitimate questions to be asking TikTok about data and security and all of those sorts of things. Like there are parts of it that I'm like, yeah, hey, look into it. Make sure it's on the up and up. Also, maybe do that with Facebook. How about? While we're at it, I think Facebook might also be doing the same thing. But because they don't have this, it's China. That's just okay, right? Like, why not go through all of, like a more scrutinous view of big technology. Sure. Yeah. Maybe that's a good idea. Figuring out what sort of data privacy we want to have. And the answer is the government doesn't. Oh, well, whatever. The government doesn't want any. They want to see your shit. That's all. Sorry. What were we talking about? Anyway, Mike Allstott, number 40, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Yeah. Randy in Portland writes in and says, all I know about the ESA is that they're a big part of planning E3. Since a lot of the big names are continually dropping out of E3, do you think the ESA will eventually give up on it? And why will the ESA even need to exist after that happens? So the ESA is a lobbying organization, and they lobby on behalf of the video game industry. And so whenever any government around the world, I guess they really just focus on the US, right? I don't know if they actually do worldwide stuff. Anyway, whenever the government says things like, hey, this game, these FIFA Ultimate Team packs seem like gambling, and they seem predatory in nature, and I'm worried about the impact they are having on our children. The video game industry pays the ESA to go and say, nuh-uh, as loud as they possibly can. And so whenever, let's say, preservation efforts want to try to preserve the Nintendo eShop before it gets taken offline in a legal way so that researchers can go ahead and get access to that material and use that material. The ESA is there to say, nuh-uh, no, absolutely not. They should definitely not be able to do that. That's piracy. And they are there to take the most archaic hardline stances on those topics imaginable in order to protect the status quo of the video game industry. That is what the ESA actually does. The E3 has been a very big profit center for them. And so that's my understanding of it, is that if you are a company and you want to get into making a lot of money, you should figure out a trade show and then sell a bunch of booth space for an insane amount of money. And that is something that the ESA has been able to do for years and years and years. And the member companies, of course, pay a fee to be represented and so on and so forth. And so I believe the video game industry does need representation in a lobbying way. It's a big enough business. This is just how things go. While you could probably sway me on the idea that no one should be able to lobby anyone for anything ever, in the world we are currently in, where that is simply not reality, the video game industry should have representation. Because it also applies when, when the government gets these ideas about like, well, we've got to censor this stuff. Kids are seeing these vampires killed these women in this video game, and the Scorpion has a skull under his mask, and he's murdering people, and kids are murdering people. The ESA is also there to say, no, this is art. This is, like the lobbying organization stuff kind of cuts both ways, right? But the loot box stuff has been something that I think they've been primarily known for in a more modern context, right? And so, yeah, if E3 goes away, the ESA will still need to exist because there'll need to be something. Maybe it's not the ESA, maybe another organization rises up in it, but that's a different conversation. I think there's definitely been, I don't know what the current stance is or how the video game industry really views the ESA these days, but I know a handful of years ago there was a real frustration on the part of the industry because the ESA didn't feel like the ESA was lobbying effectively, and that they were not intelligent responders to some of these government inquiries and some of that. So there's been leadership changes over the years and whatever else, but that is my understanding. That is generally what the ESA is there for, is to represent the video game industry in its lobbying efforts in a more unified, industry-wide way. And yeah, so I think that'll continue. Just if you just with the reality of lobbyists and lawyers and everything else that is fucking up the goddamn government. This is probably stuff that will probably need to exist in one way or the other, regardless of what happens to E3. I would be very interested to see what ends up happening to E3 in the wake of today's news around Ubisoft not being a part of the show. Because I feel like, who is confirmed for E3 now? It's a very small list, and even if you just look at like, well, who's left in the industry? If we've got Sony, Microsoft, I don't think Sony has said anything one way or the other, but that's presumed based on Sony's kind of more recent non-appearance at E3. And so, yeah, who ends up showing up to this thing? Who ends up making it happen? There was that story that Video Games Chronicle had not that long ago saying that like Konami was going to try to have a big presence there or something. And, Konami can rent out a stage with a camera just as easily as anybody else. So, I don't know that they necessarily need to go be on that show floor. I guess I'm thinking like, does this show get canceled again? does E3 end up, do they end up walking away from it? And how much money would they lose? Because at this point, the ESA is not going to get their money back from the LA Convention Center, right? That deposit is smoked. So, that's a really kind of wild scenario. The very idea that, like, what if E3 didn't happen? What if we got into the month of April and they decided to pull the plug on E3? I don't know which companies are kind of, like Devolver's not going, Devolver was always across the street anyway, right? So that, it's like you have these companies that were never really officially part of the show anyway. They're like, we're not going to E3. It's like, of course. And they can still make announcements. They can still do whatever they want. And I think that's almost worse in some ways in terms of when we talk about the viability of the ESA or the viability of E3, the number of companies that are saying, and Ubisoft being the latest one, that are saying, we will not be at E3 the show, but we'll be in Los Angeles with a live broadcast for you. Like, oh, okay. So, like, you're still doing your press, Ubisoft will still do their press conference in some way, shape, or form. And so the news will still get out there, but they're not going to go staff a booth. They're not going to go put a booth on the floor. They're not going to build a booth. They're not going to do any of that stuff. That's almost the worst one. You got Microsoft and some of the other companies that were like, hey, we're going to do something different. But we're never announced as being part of the show. That's kind of one thing. It's like, that's not great. That's not a great look for the ESA. It's not a great look for that show. But to have it then be like, oh, this is one of the companies that said they would be there. And in fact, one of the only companies that kind of went on the record saying yes, now turning around and saying no, like that's a rough one, man. I don't even know what you do. Like, what is that show? Who goes? And why? What are they hoping to accomplish by being a part of E3? Who are they hoping to reach? And will those people be there? Because now, you see a lot of people freelance. I live close by, right? So it's like, for me, it's like a whatever. For me, it's, if there's something to go to, I would like to go to it. But you've got people that are in other countries. You've got people that are, making plans about like, oh, here's the, because by April here, you've already probably had multiple meetings about here's the plan for E3. We're going to do this. We got this meeting room, like whatever you're doing. And now you're like, what are we going to do when we get there? You're like, oh, well, there'll be plenty of stuff to cover. Just none of it's part of actual E3. It's really, like I was saying earlier, at a time when no one has when media companies don't have the budget to spend, they've all been laying people off. Like they've all been not, I don't get the impression that any of them are in a great place. And so to get them to go and lay out a bunch of travel budget and everything else, and then have it blow up in their face on some of this stuff, it's troubling. It's troubling. And if I were in a position where I was far away and I had to make a bunch of advanced travel plans around going to this show or not, this would probably, well, I don't know. I don't know what I would do. There's still enough going on in town around that time that there's probably still enough to see. But it becomes a much dicier proposal overall, I think. It's an almost unprecedented situation, but also, E3 has been in such a weird space for so long. It's really hard. Jackson, Massachusetts writes and says, that new EA Sports PGA Tour game is coming out in a couple of weeks. The base game is $70, and for another $15, you can get the deluxe edition, which includes 3-day early access, a few exclusive in-game items, an XP bundle for your creative character, and Madden NFL 23. Just like a copy of Madden. That's honestly not bad as far as crappy add-on incentives go, But I just found that hilarious. I guess my question is, should every EA game come bundled with last year's Madden? Yeah, why not? I mean, the football season's over, and so the value of Madden, I'm sure that there's some metric that they're just like, as soon as the Super Bowl happens, obviously Madden sales are going to spike early on, and over the course of the football season, you'll get some people that are like, I'm excited about football, I'm going to go fucking buy Madden. Fuck yeah. But as soon as that season's over, no one's going like, yeah, I got to get out there and get that Madden. Unless they're like shopping at a discount or whatever, in which case, like, yeah, buy the golf game, get Madden, why not? And so I imagine it's just a case of like, Madden NFL 23 is done all it's going to do sales-wise, and if they give out more copies, maybe they sell some more Ultimate Team packs or something, right? But yeah, they should definitely, there should be, that should be like what's the baseline currency for Counter-Strike skins? It's like some knife skin, right? And everything is equivalent to like, this skin is worth 20 of these knife skins. Like that's the conversion currency or whatever it is. Copies of last year's Madden should become the currency for other games now. It's like $70. Man, that's 20 copies of last year's Madden or whatever it is. That's weird. That's a weird, credit to EA for shaking things up and trying to find inventive new ways to build bundles, I guess, right? Like, why not? Why not? Like I said, it's what are copies of last year's Madden worth right now anyway? Like probably like 0 again, because they've sold all they're going to sell. Like, the person who's the actual football fan bought that game a while ago and whatever. So why not run weird experiments with last year's Madden? Let's see here. Jorge writes in and says, listen to your show this week and have some notes for you from your discussion about how some people still think we need to convince people games are big. I work at a video game marketing agency, and here are some details from our experiences. And provided some background. Apparently, this company worked on the Mortal Kombat skateboard that they sold at that Mortal Kombat reveal event that I went to, which is excellent work. Congratulations. That skateboard is pretty sweet. It is in my garage. I have not ridden it, as I do not ride skateboards. I merely buy them and think about what if. Anyway, just some notes. This sounds like it's something that they use in some of their pitch decks or some of the other details they have to use when kind of convincing brands that video games matter, right? So it's just 3 bullet points here that I thought were interesting, that were sent my way. So here they are. The Game Awards are watched by more folks than the Oscars, including the latter's worldwide numbers. Turns out the only people who watch the Oscars are Americans. Most of the rest of the world doesn't give a shit. Yeah, sure. I'd totally buy that. Yeah, we talked about the Oscars thing yesterday, but I think we didn't, we were thinking like, oh, are those just US numbers or whatever the ratings were. But I would buy that. Yes, that the Game Awards have more worldwide appeal than the Oscars. Sure. I'm in America and I didn't watch the Oscars. We've spent and will continue to spend a lot of time convincing folks that games are big. A lot of execs at consumer brands are old dudes who think only sports and movies are worth doing partnerships and promotions with. Yes, in a previous life, I ran into that thing quite a bit also when it came, not directly, but more like I definitely worked up some pitches for like, hey, here's some over-the-top crazy programming that we would like to do, but we cannot afford it. And so take it out and try to sell it to a sponsor. And no one ever came back and said, hey, guess what? We sold it to a sponsor. Pack your bags. You're going to Japan. So I was like, okay, well. But yes, that is the thing, yes, that there's a lot of consumer brands that simply that are run by people that don't understand games. And this is something that I think, I bet podcast industry runs into this a lot, where there's an education process that you do as part of as part of it, whether you're a marketing person or a salesperson. If you're pitching to someone who doesn't understand the thing that you're selling them, you have to spend time educating them. Like, here's why podcasting is a big deal, and deliver some numbers that say you're reaching this huge audience for this amount of money or whatever. And video games and those types of partnerships and promotions the same way. You have to tell them like, hey, here's why video games matter, because you're some 70-year-old dude who thought that Pac-Man was where it peaked, or whatever it is, right? And so they just don't know. And so yeah, there's a lot of education. Anyway, he goes on. When they hear that global gaming revenue is higher than global film and TV, or that North American gaming revenue alone is higher than the global film revenue, even pre-pandemic, or that Hogwarts Legacy brought in more revenue than all three Fantastic Beasts openings combined, they are shocked. We spend a lot of time educating people. Yeah, totally. It's like embarrassing in a sense that like that this work still has to happen, right? That there's still all of these companies being run by people that are so super out of touch. I mean, it's like the TikTok thing where you got people asking about dilated eyeballs and like, is this going to steal my Wi-Fi or whatever? And they're just like so behind the times, like just so fucking impossibly just not up on any kind of technology, anything. It's why magazine covers mattered for as long as they did. The readership, and this was so frustrating back when we would try to negotiate for exclusives for like, hey, we'll give you the front page of motherfucking GameSpot.com. Over 1 million people will see this thing. This is going to be a big deal. This is more than any magazine will give you in a month's worth of time. We will give you in 2 days. It was just like huge numbers. But you would have a lot of companies, especially then. It's better now, but also the homepage, these homepages are probably not as big as going viral on social media, whatever it is. So it's kind of changed at both ends, but you would have situations where like companies didn't understand, like the dude running the company, the dude running, the division or whatever it was. He's like, I don't know what 1 million clicks on a website means, but I know what a magazine. And so like, if you hand him a magazine cover with his game on it, he's like, yeah, that I understand. And you're like, okay, 400,000 people saw that. That's a lot. That's not nothing. But like, if you had done the deal over here with the website, you would have seen twice that, 4 times that, whatever it was, and so that was always frustrating. It led to a situation where like the marketing team was trying to do things where they would literally like print out the front page of the website with the game in the top slot and like the popularity rankings, and see like, you really rocked it on GameSpot this month, or whatever, to try to like, again, educate these people that like, hey, these are way bigger numbers here. But they're internet numbers. And so the people didn't know what that meant. And so the idea that was something that we dealt with in the 2000s, that was something that we dealt with and I'm sure like they're probably still dealing with it to some degree, because we have stories like this, right? Where you've just got like these brands now that are just like, I'm a mainstream brand. I sell tacos. What do I need to know about esports? Esports was the last big one of these, I remember, where like, we've got to go pitch Taco Bell on promoting, on sponsoring this esports tournament. And they don't know what any of it means or why it matters. And, yeah, it's just, as someone who has been working, damn near exclusively online, since 1996, since 1995, that was our, the video game industry had to go through this, like the video game press had to go through it in a slightly different way, this kind of struggle for to be perceived as legitimate, this like kind of struggle for relevancy, and all of that was always so frustrating back then. And every time anything like it pops up, I'm always just shocked, because you just look at it and go like, man, aren't these people dead yet? Like, what are we, not to be grim, but like, it's just always just, how are we still finding these idiots to head up these companies that are like, it's their job to get these brands out there, and they don't know anything about what the landscape looks like now. And it's just flabbergasting sometimes, and it's disheartening. Like I've felt a lot of different emotions about that specific thing over the years, right? And the idea that it is still something that people have to be educated on. Like, no, by the way, video games are a big deal. It's a bummer. It should be obvious by now that video games are a big deal and that there's interest around those video games, and that brands should want to be around these popular iconic brands the same way they wanted to be around movies in the 90s and whatever it is. And so it's just this thing of just like, man, there's a lot of people that just like don't keep current, they don't stay good at their jobs, and no one can, right? I mean, sure, there's plenty of shit I don't know. I'm not sitting here going like, I'm up on everything, whatever. I don't know what fucking movies are coming out. I don't give a shit. Are movies a big deal? Sure, I'm sure some of them still are, but god damn, I don't care. And so it's impossible to stay up on everything, but at the same time, the idea that it's a shocking concept, like, what, video games? You're kidding me. Like, that sucks, man. Like, the people making these decisions should be, I'm not going to say should they be younger, because like people can stay up on things no matter, when it's their job. You'd think that they would be better at it, but here you go. And there's one more here from Jorge here. It says, as we share in meetings, 92%, and these generational breakdowns really, anyway, as we share in meetings, 92% of millennials play games, 98% of Gen Z plays games, and 99% of Gen Alpha plays games. It's entire generations. It's everyone. Boomers and Gen X executives sometimes struggle with these numbers and these realizations. Yeah. That sucks, man. It sucks that like they struggle with those sorts of things, right? I mean, it's obvious. Like I look at it as like, well, I don't know, like I guess I am technically Gen X. There was a while there where they were breaking out some kind of sub generation that was between Gen X and millennials, and I was technically a part of whatever that bridge generation was, where I'm like a little too young to very clearly be Generation X, but I'm a little too old to be considered a millennial. I forget what they called it. There was some kind of half step. Yes, Gen X Pro. Yeah, some sort of half step generation that lives in the middle there. That there's a bunch of different names for, but it's not Gen Y, because Gen Y were millennials. They stopped calling it Gen Y at some point for some reason. It's very weird. But Gen Y was always people that were very clearly younger than we were when the term Gen Y first started coming around. But now no one even uses it anymore. Xennials, that was the real bad one. That was the real bad one. But there was a few others that were less gross. Anyway, I don't know. I would consider, like, because like Generation X covers a wide swath of people and a wide swath of ages. And that has been another thing some of my time on TikTok has shown me, is you have people that are like, well, I'm firmly Gen X. And then they just they spew like the dumbest, most backwards sounding shit. I'm like, oh no, I thought that my generation and the generation that I grew up around, I thought we were the smart ones that were still equipped to understand modern society, but holy shit, this guy's fucking sucks. And I don't know. You're never too old or too young to fucking absolutely suck, I guess, is the takeaway there. But I don't know. I always thought about it as like, I grew up and then the internet happened at the exact right time for me in my teens. And I was able to get into a lot of weird shit. And that I remember a time when not everyone had cable TV, but I also remember getting my first cable modem and moving from dial-up to broadband and being fucking blown away. And I remember, like all of the technological advancements and whatever else. And I feel like largely equipped to handle a lot of it, I guess. nothing online has come my way that is like totally felt completely foreign to me, I guess is what I mean to say. There are parts of it that I look at and go like, it's a shame things went this way, or gosh, these people are fucking idiots, or, you know, whatever it is. But like, generally when things happen, I can kind of go like, oh yeah, I guess, you know, if this happened then and this happened, you know, like people that grew up, you know, I still feel like I can kind of put it together, if that makes any sense. And so to see, yeah, people that are my age or a generation older, being so completely out of touch with something like video games that like, but I guess like, you know, I don't know, when I think about when I was a kid, for as much as we talk about video games being a fad in the 80s and how they were super popular and how they were everywhere, like that didn't mean that a lot of people embraced it as a lifestyle, if that makes any sense. Like that's maybe not the right way to put it, but like to me, video games were everything from a very young age. And that remained true until I got married, probably. So you know, that was my thing. That was my main thing, you know, and West Coast hip hop. That's it. Video games, West Coast hip hop. But like there were plenty of people that were my age at that time when Pac-Man got big that didn't give a shit about video games because they were just like, I like football, I like the 49ers or whatever else, you know, and so it wasn't this universal thing even then. And so I guess I see it'd be very easy for people to be my age or even slightly younger and grow up like acknowledging that video games exist, but never really interacting with them in a meaningful way. I guess that's, you know, that's probably how that has to go. Right. So it would make sense that you would have people that were, my age or older, people in their like, I don't know, 50s or 60s or whatever, that are, you know, making decisions at these companies that just maybe never got back in touch with video games. They were just like, oh, I don't know, they were big when I was a kid. Pac-Man. And then the PlayStation, I don't know, what's Lara Croft? Oh yeah. Like what are the big touchstones for people that are out of touch with video games? I would love to know. Because it's got to be like Pac-Man, Lara Croft, Fortnite, and Minecraft. Maybe you lump those two together because they're pretty similar. I don't know. Yeah, that's it's interesting and tragic. You know, again, it's something that is so ingrained into the culture of so many people. The very idea of video games, you know, just the, or you know, this the discussion, you know, the same way that like the same way that a lot of like football lingo or like sports concepts are like, oh, we really, you know, we worked on this project and we really knocked it out of the park. You know, it's like it's a very direct baseball reference. People use it that don't know baseball, but it's a baseball reference. And so I think, you know, video games have had that as well. I'm trying to think of like good examples of that though. We leveled up. When someone say like, oh, you know, yeah, you know, we were a pretty small company, and then and is it weird that it's always like in my mind, it's always like business douchebags that are always like, yeah, man, we're a pretty small company, we signed this deal and then we leveled up, bro. And yeah, so maybe that's one. Do people actually say that? Yeah. Yes. I'm not saying that it is a common phrase or whatever, but like, but yeah, I've seen people talk about like, I leveled up my career. I went out and got another job to really level up my career and move forward. You know, like those sorts of, that sort of lingo, I guess. Yeah. What's today's video game lingo that is going to catch on? It has to be like generic enough that it's not like attached to a specific game. Yeah, Victory Royale. Yeah, I don't know. Level up is widely used in the UK. The Queen said it, says Jean-Paul Blart. Well, if the Queen said it, then you know it's legit. Let's maybe see if we can get through a couple more questions here. Taylor writes in and says, do you think Rockstar can ever go back to the way they were? Well, okay, the headline, sorry. Sometimes people reference the subject line of their email without reiterating it. Anyway, do you think Rockstar will ever be silly again? Do you think Rockstar can ever go back to the way they were to an extent, specifically with GTA games? I know Rockstar has taken quite a few beats from movies and such in their games, whether it be Scarface, Miami Vice, Boys in the Hood, Heat, etc., but managed to shoehorn in some ridiculousness along the way. Dropping porn flyers from a plane, selling blow from an ice cream truck with whipped cream tits on it, to name a couple. Wow. Do you think they'll ever go back to that style or just sprinkle it in from time to time? A standout is from GTA 2. You were tasked with rounding up a bunch of people on a bus and then delivering them to a hot dog factory so that they may be turned into delicious street meat. It was so stupid, I loved it. I think the GTA games are still inherently silly. I think that a lot of it is more emergent than it is directly written into the scripts. But yeah, I mean, from way back, from GTA 3 really, but even when, I remember talking to them when like GTA London, when the London DLC was coming out for the expansion pack was coming out for GTA 1, and they always took that thing very seriously. And I think, in order for it to be funny, in order for it to be ridiculous, you have to take everything super seriously. I think they have to have that approach of just like, okay, to work in the humor around the edges. But I think, there's the idea of like, hey, they're going to write their main storyline and there might not be as much goofy shit in that, but there's always some side character. Was GTA 5 had like all the drug trips and weird side missions and silly characters along the way as well. I think that game got very, very ridiculous. Like some of the situations you found yourself in were absolutely fucking bananas. They're like having you, like alien stuff, like just weird things are in those games and they always have been. So I think they've maybe taken some of that stuff out of the main plot lines, right? Because as they've tried to chase the movie thing more and more, which it feels like they're kind of getting away from, but we'll see when the next one comes out. But like, remember through the GTA 3 trilogy, if you will, Vice City, San Andreas, GTA 3. When the first time I saw San Andreas, I don't even know that I even saw San Andreas. I went there and sat in their, I think it was their San Francisco office, because they had a couple of PR people that just hung out in San Francisco. Hung out as if they weren't working, but they were stationed there. And going over there and saying like, hey, we're going to show you, we want to talk to you about the new game, and we want to talk to you. And it was San Andreas, and they're like, okay, check this out. And they literally, and I've said this before, but they literally put on a videotape, or I don't know, maybe it was a file at that point. It was a long time ago, of a bunch of movies cut together. Boys in the Hood, Menace to Society, like those types of movies, all kind of like spliced together to kind of say, like, here's kind of the vibe we're going for. Here's some West Coast hip hop. Here's some, news clips about gang stuff, or, a sizzle reel that didn't include any footage of the game in it. It was never something they were like, here, go put this on the website. It was not something they put out as an asset. It was just like, here's a tone thing that we made, or here's what we're chasing after. And so they've always sort of had that approach. Yes, a mood board, if you will. And that was their approach for those games. And I think over time, I think they got that out of their system in a direct way. And now it's a lot more indirect. Like there's certainly stuff in GTA 4 and 5 that you go like, well, clearly this is stuff that is inspired by the world of film or whatever else, right? But I don't know that it's something that they necessarily, I wonder if they still create something like that. When GTA 1 came out, they actually made a short film, and put it out. And I want to say that's where the name Claude came from, is that like they said the name Claude in that movie, but it was never in. Was that when GTA 3 came? I'm trying to remember. But they produced a short film, or they put out they put out a film. Was it GTA 2? Yeah, you're probably right. But it was that early era. So yeah, where they produced this thing and did put that out. And so they were always, I think, even when they didn't necessarily directly have like, here's the inspiration we're going for, I think they were always thinking about their games that way, you know, and like, hey, here's a film that's inspired by, you know, some of the here's what, when we see GTA 1 and 2 in our head, here's what we see. And it's just this, you know, stylized music video, kind of cut together crime thing, driving fast, doing stuff, you know, like it is what it is. You know, it's not like you wouldn't look at it and go like, this is amazing, you know, but you look at it and go like, okay, yeah, no, I get I get why you do that. I get why when you think about your games, you're thinking about them in this lens, especially pre GTA 3, when the games couldn't look as good as they went on to look, right? You know, when you've got a top-down game, when you've got, you know, everything in those first two GTA games, you know, you kind of have to imagine it as being this larger thing than it really is. But as the games kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger, they don't have to do as much of that because the game just represents what they want to, you know, like you see it in the game. They put it on the screen for you. And I think they're just like better at doing that and better at, you know, making that a reality. Yeah. So like, yes, GTA 5, yes, it's Heat is definitely like, you know, because it's heists, right? Especially when they got it more heists into the online stuff. But like, yeah, definitely, I'm sure it was a touchstone for them. When you look at like, oh, we want to play as these three characters, like we're kind of building a crew, and they're different guys. You know, Neil McCauley and Wayne Grow are two pretty different motherfuckers, and so are Trevor and fucking the main fucking guy from GTA 5. Not Franklin, not Trevor, the other one. I totally can't remember his name. Anyway, that Michael. Sure, Michael. All right. Yeah, totally. But you see that in it, you know, and I don't know that they necessarily had to go and cut together a bunch of video of Heat to help people understand the game that they were making, you know, but I don't know. I think those games are ridiculous. And I think that, you know, they are the satire that they have incorporated into those games, whether it's, you know, on the radio or off the radio or whatever, like there've always been ridiculous things in those games. I think even Red Dead is very silly. But again, a lot of that is very far out of the way. If it's something that it's going to be dialogue and it's written into the game, or, you know, it's going to be some weird reaction. You did a weird thing and they react to it. Like what is it? Like running and jumping off the fucking cliff with the cult or whatever, you know, there's just the simple pleasure of amazing video game physics and dragging a guy behind a horse or a train or something, you know, like there's plenty of silly things in Rockstar's games. And I think they've still had that style. I think some of it they need to grow out of, because I think some of it is dumb. You know, it's the same way that, you know, Saints Row had their fake Wendy's chain and they called it Freckle Bitches. And, you know, it's on the nose. It's very coarse. It's like funny in a shocking way. But at some point you're like, okay, we can do better. And I think in the last game, one of the things I actually appreciated is they like, if you go find those restaurants, they're just called FBs now. And you go like, you know, I think some people were like, I can't believe they censored Freckle Bitches. You're like, no. In the corporate hellscape in which we now live, perceived through the lens of Saints Row, of course. In a world where Kentucky Fried Chicken decided that they needed to rebrand as KFC because people didn't like the word fried, the very idea of changing the name of it to FBs is a way funnier joke. It's a way better and a way more modern joke than the original fucking just like, I don't know, throw in a curse word. That's how crazy our world is that the burger joint's called Freckle Bitch. And you're like, all right, man. It's way funnier and way more now to think about the fucking capitalist corporate fucking hellscape and how that would years later look at something like a Freckle Bitch and go, it's FBs now. I think that is maybe the best bit of comedy in that last Saints Row game. It's a pretty subtle thing. And I thought that was really funny. But again, in the world in which we live, it's perfect. And so it becomes actual satire instead of just like, I don't know, we put a curse in it and there you go. So yeah, I don't know. Like, I think I'm curious to see what Rockstar ends up doing because yeah, I think the core narrative, like when we got to GTA 4, really, if you play that game straight, it's a very different game than if you're just like, well, I don't know, let's enter cheat codes and spawn tanks and kill everybody and shoot all these cops. And you know, the first time I played through GTA 4. I didn't do a lot of wild stuff because San Andreas had so much wild stuff in it that I didn't feel the need to do it. And the world and the character and everything else seemed like, oh, I just don't think this guy would do that. But there's plenty of opportunity to have a bunch of weird shit happen in that game. Plenty of silly stuff in GTA 4. A lot of silly stuff in GTA 5. And I'm only talking about the campaign because I never really kept up with online. But I think they've just adjusted it in a way that it kind of just fits together better than it ever did. It's maybe a little less in your face. But I think that works out better because you feel like you're uncovering this ridiculous moment. And yeah, I don't know. I like that about the way the direction they've taken those games in. Yeah, so I don't know. I guess I disagree with the premise that those games are not silly. I think they are incredibly silly games. They are ridiculous. Like the even playing them straight, these situations that those characters get put into is nonsense. Let's see. Maybe we'll take one more before we go. This one we took that one last week. Oh man, I hate it when I forget to unstar the emails. I don't know that if I've managed to fuck up and read the same email twice in a row, but I would not be shocked. Let's see. Last one here from Eric in Des Moines. The past few days have been really interesting for the Activision Microsoft acquisition here. I'm sure you'll probably touch on this in the news section, but I find it fascinating that after all this time, Congress is asking if it's anti-competitive to pay third parties to specifically keep certain content off of competitors' hardware. It's still crazy to me that the Final Fantasy VII Remake has yet to see a wider release, with the rumors surrounding timed exclusivity deals being extended and re-upped. It's not like Square can afford to port it. What would happen if it became illegal to pay to keep content off of rivals' hardware with exclusivity clauses? I believe it would force those console manufacturers to compete in more interesting ways than just paying to keep content off of platforms. I know this would get messy with smaller devs signing deals to get funding to come to platforms outside of PC, but I think a change like this wouldn't keep those smaller titles on a single platform for long, and it would be a good overall change to the business of video games as a whole. What do you think about this? I don't, well, there's a lot in there, Eric, but I think there are still situations where, and Square has been a part of this, I think, in multiple cases, but I don't know specifically around the Final Fantasy VII Remake, yes or no. But it is not unheard of for Japanese developers to say, we're going to put our games out on PlayStation and Switch. Now it's, PC gets included, which makes it even weirder. But like, it is not unheard of for them to just go like, yeah, we're just putting it out on PlayStation because that's the platform that matters where they live. and Switch also, obviously. And it's not necessarily about like, oh, we're signing a deal to keep it off Xbox. It's like, we're only going to put this out on 1 or 2 platforms because that's, just all we have the bandwidth to do right now. And we're focusing on this. Will we put it out on Xbox later? Maybe. I don't know if we, and in Square's case, it's almost like, well, if we wait long enough, Microsoft will show up and pay us to do the work. So, or they'll do the work for us and market it for us. And, so maybe we'll just wait for them to come calling. And then Persona can be on Xbox, and then it's not like there was some exclusive deal keeping Persona 4 off of Xbox platforms for years and years and years. There are just situations where developers just don't do it, or publishers decide it's not worth it from us from a, we're not going to make our money back doing that. We, our audience for this type of game generally understands that they need to buy a PlayStation to get access to. I think that's still the case. Like it's better, but I think it is still the case that if you are someone who is primarily interested in playing Japanese made games on a console, odds are you're going to be better off with a PlayStation. And I think if you look at the games and how they get ported, whether it's an exclusive deal or not, some of that stuff just happens naturally. And it isn't always about an exclusive deal or whatever else, right? It increases, it is. There are deals out there being made, but I think Microsoft still has work to do in that arena, but also I don't know what more they, because they've shown they're willing to pay to get some of those games over there. And maybe that's a problem of their own creation. Maybe if you got developers or publishers that are just like, the money we would get selling it on Xbox, it's not something we desperately have to have. The catch in all this, I guess, the part where I think some of it breaks down is that a lot of these games get ported to PC still. And so you have situations where games come out and they're like, we're on PlayStation and PC. And you're like, all right, that seems like it would be an environment where you could put it out on Xbox without, not to say it's zero work, but seems like something you could do, but they don't. But I guess it's not always an exclusivity arrangement that keeps that from happening. And so in a world where those types of arrangements became illegal or anti-competitive or whatever, frowned upon by the government or whatever it is, I think you would still have situations where publishers like Square would just be like, yeah, it's coming out on PlayStation and PC because that's where we see the bulk of our sales. We haven't really seen, you could argue it's a chicken and egg thing, that because they don't support the Xbox as directly as they could, that maybe that's led to a situation where, the customer base knows that they should have bought a PlayStation if they wanted to play a Persona game. You know what I mean? So you end up kind of self-selecting those consumers anyway, and you just kind of further exacerbate the way of things in a way that you're like, oh, well, now even more of our consumers that buy our types of games are doing it on a PlayStation. So, all right, now we have even less of a reason to put stuff out on Xbox or whatever. And so I'd be curious to see, like, how much those deals were for when it came time to like, okay, let's, like how much are they selling that stuff for? Did it just come into Game Pass? But like, it's $20 right now. But like when Persona 4 Golden came to Xbox, and it is on Game Pass, do you think that's a big deal, or is that like a little one? Is it, hey, Microsoft's going to pay enough money that covers the cost of doing this, and so it's literally all profit for us, so we might as well, maybe. I don't know. There's a lot of ins and outs of that but I guess there's a lot of ins and outs on that don't necessarily require there to be an exclusivity agreement in place at the outset, because there are just still plenty of situations where a publisher or developer, whatever the decision maker, decides they want to target PlayStation with their game. And that's been the case since the Xbox was invented. Xbox has always been in a situation where they got their Japanese games through deals. through marketing deals, through, going to Sega and doing a widespread thing, like, okay, put put Jet Set Radio, put all this stuff on Xbox. Dead or Alive 3. Microsoft paid to get Dead or Alive 3 exclusively on the original Xbox. And that's been the story with them, with Japanese developers. It's better now, but that has still been part of the overall story of the Xbox and Japanese publishers. Because it's been like, well, Capcom was on board, and like some studios were like, no, of course we're going to make games for every platform. Why wouldn't we? But I think you have some situations where they're like, no, we're not going to do that. And I wonder, man, I had never thought of that before, but I wonder if there's ever been a case where a publisher said, we're just not going to put it on Xbox because we know if we just wait long enough, they'll show up with a check and pay us to put it on Game Pass, or they'll pay us they'll cover the entire cost of the port if we wait long enough, because they can't afford that level of disparity in the marketplace. I wonder, That's a fun conspiracy to think about. Anyway, that's going to do it for us here. Thanks everybody for watching and hanging out. Thanks to my guest, one David Lang, for coming through and spending a couple hours with us, of course. Let's see what's going on. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Normally I stream on Wednesdays. We've got some doctor appointment stuff happening in that window, so I'm gonna either stream early or late, or I might not be able to get it all. It'll depend on how long some of that stuff goes, and so I may be with you just on Friday this week, because I am out on Thursday to look at some stuff. So yeah, Wednesday's up in the air. Friday should be here to hang out, and we'll talk about whatever the heck's going on. I don't know what came out. There was something I was like, oh hell yeah, this is coming out today. I gotta check this out. But anyway, yeah, stuff going on this week. Kind of crazy week. So I will be handling that, and hopefully this roof is getting fixed up here. Any WrestleMania predictions? I predict I will be there both days. Wow. That's going to be exciting. Again, if only from I haven't left the house in a long time sort of way. So, yeah, but I don't know. I think Cody's winning. I still think that this is where you see something resembling an implosion of the bloodline. And this is where you see the Usos lose the tag belts. This is where you see Roman Reigns lose. And then they start telling the story of, everything blowing up and everything going bad and all that sort of stuff. I would have thought that they got there a different way than they did, but yeah, that's I think my big main yes, that was it. Crime Boss Rockay City is out, I think, today. That I don't even know what the fuck that game is. I mean, I am very interested to see that thing. Because it's just such a bizarre, everything about that game looked bizarre from when they announced it, and it kind of has like Payday vibes from the trailers and stuff, but I don't think it's a multiplayer. Anyway, whatever. I want to see what that thing is. So we'll take a look at that at some point for sure. And yeah, I'm trying to think what else is even happening at WrestleMania. I don't even know. Those are the big ones. That's why I'm going. I don't know. Yeah, I think that this is where John Cena and Austin Theory. Okay, sure. I think I think that it would be interesting to have John Cena win, because I think that would be an interesting character building moment for Austin Theory. Because I don't think that Austin Theory winning, I don't think that does much for his character. The idea of like, he beat John Cena, and you're like, oh, okay. Yeah, of course he did. John Cena's the old guy coming back, and that's what old guys coming back should do from a conventional wisdom perspective. So it's almost more interesting to have John Cena beat him bad and then have that be part of his kind of ongoing story of, rebuilding his character in the post Vince era, because obviously the old Austin Theory persona was fucking terrible, and he's doing a lot better now, but maybe you have him lose here just to kind of further that story. Yeah, what will happen to the egg? We'll have to wait and see. Will Dominic beat Rey Mysterio? I think having Rey Mysterio lose on a week that he's going into the Hall of Fame is really weird. I think that this is Dominic getting the shit beat out of him, but that story, that just ends that story. I think Dominic, I don't think there's some big reconciliation there. I think Dominic is too weirdly over as a heel. It's a weird thing to say, but here we are. For that to make a ton of sense, but I don't know. Does Rey Mysterio retire? It doesn't sound like he's going to. It sounded like that was maybe on the table at a point, but I think the thing with that I'm most like about is I don't necessarily want to see them run angles at the Hall of Fame. I think that's weird. I think that's a little too carny for me. And so, I don't know. I don't know. I with that, I guess, because I would like to see, I'd like to see Asuka win. That is always my forever stance. I would like to see Asuka win. I would like Asuka to have nice things. Charlotte Flair should probably lose. Anyway, that's I don't know. That is kind of my quick takes on some of the storylines. It's probably kind of telling that I'm like, oh yeah, what other matches are happening other than the Bloodline related stuff? Because I feel like they have not done an amazing job of building up anything else for the show. I'm excited to see it all, but at the same time, on paper, I'm just like, oh yeah, right, yeah. Oh, Edge is gonna fight Finn Balor. Will Finn Balor be the demon, or is Gangrel gonna be there? And you're like, okay, sure. Omos versus Lesnar. I'm not invested in that match at all. I will happily watch it. But I don't, like you probably have Lesnar lose, right? Because the other guy's just there more often and probably needs the win to help establish him as a monster. Anyway, whatever. I'm not going to sit here and talk about kooky wrestling theories for another hour, but yes, I'm excited to go and see the show and go and see some friends that I just haven't seen in a very long time. So that'll be cool too. Anyway, thanks everybody for hanging out. This is the end of the show. I'm going to push this button and it's all going to go away. I don't know what happens here because again, I have not used this tool for live streaming before, but yeah, I will see you soon. I'll probably see you on Friday. If I had to guess, I would say Wednesday probably ends up not happening at all just from a timing perspective, but maybe you'll see me sooner, maybe not, but yeah, I will try to keep you posted as much as I can. Head over to patreon.com/Jeff Gerstmann. Again, annual talk more gooder. Annual memberships are now available. And yeah, stay tuned. But don't stay tuned. I'm going away. Hey, I'll see you in a couple days. Have a good one. I'll see you.